Madam Chair, members of the Commission, we're now live.
Press *0. You are the first caller for this conference.
Good evening and
While others
welcome
join.
to the June 11th, 2025 meeting of the Montgomery County Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Karen Burdett and I am the chair, and I will now ask the commissioners and staff to introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Michael Galway.
Jeffrey Haynes.
Julie Pelletier.
Mark Dominiani.
Devin Martha, Preservation Staff.
Laura Pasquale, Preservation Staff.
Dan Bruckert, Historic Preservation Staff.
Rebecca Ballo, Historic Preservation Staff.
John Lieberts, Historic Preservation Staff.
Thank you. We are going to begin tonight's meeting with a public hearing and work session for the Wilson and Charlotte Jordan House. Is there a staff report for this?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. For the record, John Lieberts, Cultural Resource Planner. The purpose of tonight's public hearing and work session is for the Historic Preservation Commission to evaluate the Wilson and Charlotte Jordan House, a two-story folk Victorian dwelling built circa 1885. The commission will determine whether the property meets the designation criteria outlined in the county code, and based on these findings, it will make a recommendation to the planning board on whether the property should be listed in the locational atlas and index of historic sites. Staff recommends that the Historic Preservation Commission takes the following actions. Find that the Jordan House lacks architectural and historic significance and therefore does not satisfy the designation criteria outlined in the county code, and recommend that the planning board deny the listing the property in the locational atlas and index of historic sites. To begin, I will provide the commission with site and background information on the property, including its prior reviews by the Historic Preservation Commission, Planning Board, and County Council. The Jordan's house sits on a 0.19-acre rectangular parcel mid-block on the east side of Liberty Mill Road, approximately 375 feet south of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad tracks in Germantown. On the left, the red pin marks the property's general location, and on the right is a detailed view that highlights the property's boundaries on the east side of Liberty Mill Road. The Montgomery County Planning Board established the locational atlas in 1976. Properties listed in the atlas receive partial protection from demolition or substantial alteration until they are formally evaluated for inclusion in the Master Plan for Historic Preservation. The Planning Board can add or remove properties from this inventory at any time following a public hearing. In 1976, the Montgomery County Planning Board added the subject property to the Locational Atlas and Index of Historic Sites as part of the Germantown Locational Atlas District. As part of the comprehensive amendment to the Germantown Master Plan, the Historic Preservation Commission and Planning Board transmitted to the County Council a proposed designation for the Germantown Master Plan Historic District, which included the subject property. However, in 1989, the County Council approved and adopted a significantly smaller environmental setting for the Germantown Master Plan Historic District that excluded the Jordan House. So this slide is a graphic representation of the evolution of the Germantown Historic District. On the left, the Germantown Locational Atlas District, established by the Planning Board in 1976, and included the Jordan House, which is marked by the red arrow. In the center, the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning Board transmitted the proposed environmental setting for the Germantown Master Plan Historic District to the County Council in 1988. This setting included the Jordan House within its boundaries, again marked by the red arrow. And on the right, the final approved environmental setting for the Germantown Master Plan Historic District, which ultimately excluded the Jordan House. So here, the historic district is hatched in red, while the Jordan House is hatched in blue. Following the historic district's reduction, the County Council instead designated 3 individual resources among the excluded properties as master plan historic sites. And these sites are shaded red on the map. You have the 3 sites here, here, and here. Here are photographs of those 3 individual sites listed by the County Council in the Master Plan for Historic Preservation. You have the Upton Bowman House on the left, the Wallach Heimer House in the center, and the Pumphrey Madany House and Store on the right. So as part of that same plan, the county council rezoned the subject property to a commercial transition zone. And more recently, the 2019 Mark Rail Community Sector Plan confirmed its commercial residential neighborhood zone with a C of 0.5, a residential of 0.25, and a height of 35, as shown on the zoning map and circled in red. So now I'll shift our attention to the Jordan House itself. The Wilson and Charlotte Jordan House, again built circa 1885, reflects the folk Victorian style. The simple wood frame L-shaped dwelling features a 2-story, 3-bay side gable house with a full-width front porch facing Liberty Mill Road. A 2-story rear gable L extends from the southern end, while a small 1-story hipped roof wood frame addition is along the north elevation of the L. The house rests on an irregular coarse, uncut rubble stone foundation, and the foundation supports a wood frame structural system clad in wood lap siding. However, the original siding was covered with non-historic vinyl siding in 1989. The asphalt shingle gable roofs features box eaves with gable end returns. 3 internal gable end corbelled brick chimneys pierce the roof near the gable ends, with the north chimney on the side gable section having been replaced, and that is this chimney here. Typical fenestration includes non-historic 1/1 double-hung vinyl sash windows adorned with fixed louvered replacement shutters. All the wood window frames and sills have been wrapped in non-historic materials, and on the slide we have a view of the house in 1984 and one from the present day. These images provide views of the rear L and the 1-story addition resting on a pure foundation. On the left, for the 1-story addition, on the left we see part of the interior of the 1-story addition where the original wood siding on the rear L is visible. Moving to the center, this photograph shows the crawl space beneath the addition and floor joist. And on the right, the image shows the framing underneath the vinyl siding, which had been peeled up slightly. The submitted Maryland Inventory of Historic Properties form noted that the 1-story addition was built using log construction, but staff found no architectural evidence to support that conclusion. Lastly, located in the southeast corner of the property is a single-car garage marked by the red arrow. Next, I'll briefly share the history of the house and its past occupants. In 1873, Douglas and Mary Clopper sold 89 acres at Germantown to brothers William and Henry Blunt. William Blunt, who lived near Germantown, operated several businesses along the railroad tracks. In 1882, the Blunts sold 65 square perches, approximately 0.4 acres, of their property to James Edmund Wallach for $75. The southern half of this conveyance included the subject property. James Wallach, a carpenter and local builder in Germantown, constructed several dwellings and possibly a public schoolhouse. In 1884, the Wallachs sold the property to Mary Vincent for $800, a price likely reflecting the cost of construction for Wallach to build a Vincent family home. That same year, Mary and Edgar Vincent, her husband, secured an additional mortgage for $162 on the property. Tax assessment records from 1885 listed that Vincent was the owner of an improved lot in Germantown, valuing the land at $400 and improvements at $75. The low valuation of improvements suggests that the house was still unfinished at the time of the assessment in 1885. In 1894, Mary Vincent passed away, leaving the ownership of the property uncertain. Her heirs included her husband, Edgar, and their children. And while most of the children were adults, one child, Herbert, was still a minor, which complicated the property's title. On September 25th, 1901, the adult heirs transferred ownership of the property to Mary's sisters, Lacey T. Gallagher for $800. Lacey, her husband James, and their children moved into the house. However, the Gallaghers' ownership remained clouded due to Herbert's legal inability to divest his interest in the land. In 1904, the Montgomery County Circuit Court ordered the sale of the property at public auction, and the advertisement shown on the left describes the house as containing 6 rooms. At the auction, Lacey Gallagher repurchased the property for $900. In 1910, Lacey and James divided the property, selling the northern section to her nieces, Jenny Longstreet Rice and Lizzie Rice, who were the daughters of George Rice. and this division created the subject 0.19 acre property. The Gallaghers continued living in the subject house for several years, but had to move to Washington, D.C. by 1920, likely due to a change in jobs. In 1926, they sold the subject property and house to Lucy Selby. Lucy Selby had married Augustus Selby in 1908. Augustus was a well-known miller who owned businesses in Sykesville, Maryland, and Shepherdstown, West Virginia, before establishing the Liberty Milling Company at Germantown in 1918. These Selbys owned a now demolished house and likely rented the subject property to tenants. In 1951, Emory Jordan and Charlotte Wilson moved into the house. Oral tradition states that the Selbys provided the property to the Jordans rent-free. Wilson Jordan, who studied theology at Western Maryland College, served as a minister in the Methodist Episcopal Church South after graduation. The Baltimore Conference first assigned him to Goshen, Virginia, before later reassigning him to Clarksburg in Montgomery County. In 1932, newspapers documented his prolonged illness and treatment at Johns Hopkins Hospital, which ultimately led to his withdrawal from the church. And following this, his career shifted from ministerial work to electrical contracting. Between 1940 and 1950, various records show that the Jordans lived in Barnesville, and after the couple relocated to the subject house in Germantown in 1951, they remained actively involved in the church community and regularly participated in local events. Wilson Jordan played Santa Claus at the annual tree lighting at the old post office for many years, and the Jordans continued to reside in the house until 1986. Now we'll move on to the staff evaluation. To date, neither staff nor the Historic Preservation Commission has evaluated the Wilson and Charlotte Jordan House on its own merits as a potential master plan historic site using the designation criteria outlined in the county code. Staff finds that the subject property does not satisfy the designation criteria for historical and cultural significance or architectural and design significance. Staff concludes that the property does not meet the designation criteria for historical and cultural significance as a master plan historic site. The resource lacks exceptional character, interest, or value in relation to development of the county, state, or nation, and does not exemplify its cultural, economic, social, or political heritage. Additionally, the house does not represent a significant historic trend in the development of Germantown. The property has no meaningful association with a notable event or individual who made substantial contributions to society as well. While Lucy and Augustus Selby, a prominent figure in Germantown's history and a former county council member, owned the house, they never resided in it. And long-term occupants Jordan and Charlotte Wilson were well known and respected within the community, but their presence did not significantly impact the development of Germantown or Montgomery County, and nor does the house have any direct association with their charitable contributions. For architectural and design significance, staff finds that the property does not meet the designation criteria for listing as a master plan historic site. The house is a typical modest example of a folk Victorian architecture with ornamentation limited to minimal jigsaw cut trim on the front porch. Previous alterations, including the covering of the original wood siding and the replacement of the 2/2 double-hung wood sash windows, have impacted its original character. Likely built by local builder James Wallach, the house does not reflect the work of a master builder or possess high artistic value. Furthermore, the Wallach-Heimer House Master Plan Historic Site, designated by the County Council in 1989, more effectively represents the Wallach family's architectural contributions to Germantown. And lastly, the resource does not serve as an established feature of the neighborhood due to a singular physical characteristic. And in conclusion, again, staff recommends that the HPC takes the following actions. Find that the Jordan House lacks architectural and historic significance and therefore fails to satisfy the designation criteria, and recommend that the planning board denies listing the property in the locational atlas and index of historic sites. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are people here tonight to testify in regard to this case, would you please come forward? Do we have any mics at the table tonight?
One moment.
if you'll just bear with us, we'll get you a mic, so for the record. Is there a timer? When you're, now my mic is on.
Good evening.
Yeah, would you please identify yourself and your relationship to this case? Thank you.
My name is Susan Cook Soderberg. I am representing the Germantown Historical Society. First, I'd like to thank the staff for their work visiting the site and adding vital information to my original MHT form. So I know we're all here with the same goal to preserve structures that provide important and useful data for the study of history and culture of Maryland and Montgomery County, which includes the local communities. My question is why? Why do we preserve old buildings? What is our goal? I know we have 9 criteria that we go by, but these are guidelines, and they're open to interpretation, and often interpreted in different ways, especially when you're judging an individual site or a house that is a contributing resource to a historic district. Use different standards. You've seen my written statement with my arguments, so you know where I stand on that. You know I'm a historian, and I'm more concerned with preserving the building as evidence of history than architecturally, especially local history. My continuing argument about this when I served on the commission where you now serve, we're certain that the Wilson and Jordan House satisfies criteria 1A and 1C because the people who owned it, built it, and lived in it over its 140 years were people involved with the development of Germantown, the Methodist Church of the community, and the cultural associations and practices of the society at the time. Wilson Jordan, by the way, Wilson and Charlotte do have a stained glass window at the current United Trinity Methodist Church, and this was paid for by the community. An old-time GoFundMe, I guess. We also feel that it satisfies criteria 2A as an example of the architectural creation of the local vernacular builder, his usual work, not the special house he built for himself. So I agree with the staff that the house may not qualify for designation as an individual site because of the changes to the windows, but I contend that it should certainly be included as a contributing structure to the historic district if it had ever been considered at the time. And if it had, those changes would not have been made. Could I have the first map, please? So the map created by the HPC staff showing the property under considerations, you will notice, is it up? Oh, I see. So you see that little indent where I have the yellow mark? That is the house. It is on a P213, and it is marked on this map as a vacant lot. And this is the map that was used by Historic Preservation to draw the historic district, which then went on to the planning board. This is a mistake. The map, next map, please. The map showing the historic district as it was whittled down by the county council after having been approved unanimously by the HPC and by the planning board, and the individual sites separated out of that by the county council with no special criteria applied. What I passed out to you, by the way, is a petition that was signed in favor of designation by a majority of the homeowners in the historic district as before the County Council whittled it down. And third map, my map showing these properties, the ones that are still there and the ones that are no longer there with X's on them, so you can see how many we've lost. Finally, the zoning map, showing how 1 year after the creation of the district, the owners of two properties, who were, by the way, commercial realtors, had their properties zoned commercial. This means that the Jordan House, now owned by a bank, will certainly be torn down if it's not designated as historic and replaced by a commercial enterprise. Now, these maps, I won't, my point in showing you these maps is that when it got to the county council, it got political. And I certainly hope that you, as a body, will never let this happen again. I suggest that because of mistakes made in the original establishment of the Germantown Historic District, that you send this back to the planning board, who will then send it back to the county council for reconsideration of the entire historic district again because of the mistakes made, whether intentional or not. Questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions for the staff or for Ms. Soderberg? Commissioner Pelletier.
Thank you for your testimony. When did those two properties end up commercial? When was that zoning changed?
The subject property was changed to that commercial transition zone as part of the 1989 Germantown Master Plan. Then its zoning was reaffirmed in the 2019 Mark Rails Community Sector Plan, which is the current plan that provides master plan guidance to this area.
I'm sorry, what was the second date?
2019 is when the Mark Rails Communities Plan was approved.
Thank you.
And that was over the objections of the residents.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner Pelletier?
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, and maybe it was I didn't get a chance to read all of the testimony or the report, but why are there these two commercial properties in the middle of this residential area? Is it?
Sure. So from the Germantown Master Plan in 1989, there's an excerpt that talks about 1932 Liberty Mill Road, which is this property. And it states the property at 19323 Germantown Road, that's what it was formerly addressed at, and the adjoining vacant lot are suitable for low-intensity office uses and should be rezoned commercial transition zone. But the following issues of compatibility need to be addressed at the time of subdivision and/or site plan review, and unless the preservation of the existing single-family detached residential character and setbacks, visual screening of parking areas and retention of existing trees. So that's in the 1989 plan. And then the 2019 plan, when they look at the zoning for all the properties, this is confirmed to be this commercial zone, and it's a CRN zone. They apply to it a 0.5 commercial, 0.25 residential with a height of 35 feet for the building. And so that's how that transitions between the two plans.
And that was applied for by the owners at the time?
That was what was approved by the county council.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Chair Burdett. Was it designated as a commercial property because they thought the lot was empty? Or why was it and nothing else along the strip a CR?
I would not, I'm not going to suggest to know what the exact reasoning was, but there were walking site visits of this. When the county council subcommittee went out, they went on a walking tour of Germantown, so they would have been aware of what buildings were demolished, and not just from looking at the entire district. The records state to that, but you know, in terms of what's in the master plan guidance, it calls the property at 19323 Germantown Road, and the adjoining vacant lot is how it's described. and the 1989 master plan.
May I just say, I led that walking tour.
This is Chair Burdett. I'm just trying to understand, obviously, the lots across the street were converted to a housing development, two housing developments, but all the properties on this side of the street are still single-family, and zoned for single-family, except this one lot?
Well, there's another lot as well that is around
The corner.
the corner from that. I mean, again, the county council established this zone in the late 1980s and then reaffirmed it as part of their 2019 master plan. The reasoning that we have is what is laid out in the approved and adopted master plan. You know, whether that was an individual property owner lobbying at the time, that certainly occurs. But the end result is what was affirmed by the county council and then carried over. So the property has been zoned as it is for about the last 35 years. And aside from that, you know, if you have additional questions that we could take back to the planning staff, we're happy to do that. You know, following this hearing, if there's just other questions about the rationale behind how these zones are established, we'd be happy to address that.
Thank you.
Could I answer the chair's question?
Sure, Ms. Otterberg, please.
Why that second property was zoned commercial? You want to go back to that slide? Because that was zoned commercial back in the 1880s. It was a carriage making business.
That makes sense. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Pelletier.
Oh, what was it? Come back.
Are there any other? Yes, Commissioner Haynes.
So I'm somewhat not understanding quite everything. So in 1976, the planning board included the property in its locational atlas for Germantown. In '88, it was part of the environmental setting. Then a year later, the county council downsizes the environmental setting and excludes this particular property.
Let me just make one correction to that. So exactly, so on the left, that's the established locational atlas district. When you come to, as this is moving forward as part of the comprehensive Germantown Master Plan Historic District, like you do now for proposals, you propose an environmental setting to the planning board. The planning board takes that environmental setting, changes it if they believe so, and then transmits that to the county council as part of the public hearing, the planning board draft of the plan. So what you're seeing in the middle is not something that's ever been approved. It was the Historic Preservation Commission's and the planning board's recommended boundary for a Germantown Master Plan Historic District. So then it goes to the county council, who holds their subcommittee hearings and their hearings on the actual plan. And as part of that process, they reduce the size of the setting from what's proposed by the Historic Preservation Commission and the planning board to what you have on the right, which is that area hatched in red. So what was in the center is never approved or adopted by the county council. They're not reducing it. They're not taking something that they decided was historic and reducing it. They're just not agreeing with the Historic Preservation Commission's and Planning Board's recommendation of what that environmental setting should be.
And did they give a rationale as to why they disagreed?
There's no rationale stated in the master plan amendment. They designated as part of that, there's multiple houses within the district. There's the bank building, there's the depot building. And as part of that, when they decide to reduce the setting of the environmental setting, they identified 3 houses that they individually then listed as master plan historic sites that were a part of that excluded district. They pull out those 3 and list them as master plan sites on their own accord.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Sorry, I remember my question. So because this property was on the locational atlas, was it still on the locational atlas even when it was cut from the final boundaries of the environmental setting?
Well, the locational atlas, again, is just a temporary holding place until things are evaluated for the master plan. So once the county council takes action that this is the master plan boundary, you know, the locational atlas goes away, right?
Oh,
So
okay. Okay, so I'm curious why this house has lasted so long, if it hasn't been designated and it's not within, like, why wasn't the house torn down years ago?
No application for demolition came forward.
Okay.
I can't speculate further.
Okay, thank you.
This is Chair Burdett. I guess I want to kind of continue with that thought, is that along that way, quite a few of the houses are still residential.
Yes.
Are any of them commercial businesses?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
But again, I couldn't speculate. I haven't looked into that.
So their rationale when they didn't include that strip of property, of all those houses along that one side, I mean, they just didn't include it in the historic district, but then they changed the zoning for this one lot to commercial residential, a CR.
Yes, that's correct.
And then nothing happens for all these years, for 35 years.
Correct.
Nothing happens until right now. And actually, there is no immediate change coming to the house. It's just because it's no longer in ownership by a family or a single person, it's going to be sold by the bank. There's a risk that it could be sold and torn down for a larger building, or it is possible that someone could buy the house and turn it into an office as it is.
That is correct. And any of these houses could be, not in the district, could be sold at any time to anybody. And even the structures that are still in the residential zone could be sold, torn down, and a larger house could be built. There are any number of possibilities that would, involve demolition and a change of use, or demolition and no change of use for these properties. Yes.
But the idea that, I mean, I'm thinking back to the 80s, and what was kind of the thing to do, or popular things. The idea that it would be torn down and turned into this little tiny office park or office, building is kind of not as likely, simply because it would cost too much to build something like that for an office situation when we just have a lot of other places, and there's no such thing. I mean, retail isn't booming anymore. So, and I'm not going one way or the other with that. I'm just thinking through development ideas from 35 years ago versus development ideas today.
I mean, certainly there is demand. It is right by a train station.
Mm-hmm.
So there have been demolitions and townhomes built. The county is embarking right now on another sector plan study for downtown Germantown to look at the employment areas, to look at the commercial zoning, to see, what else could be done to maximize, frankly, the land use potential of this area that is right by, that is part of a major transit hub. So you're right. These conversations have been happening for quite some time and will continue to happen so long as the MARC rail station is there and the property owners in the county are interested in promoting, multimodal transit and, smart growth development around these train stations in a way that is responsive and responsible to the assets that are there.
Okay, I thank you. But at the same time, there is a severe shortage of small houses, square footage houses, simple houses that, for first-time home buyers, that are, that step for generational wealth, that first step for generational wealth. There just nobody builds those anymore. It's the ones that are existing that have merit if they manage to not get torn down to put up yet a McMansion.
I absolutely agree with you. And it's our housing staff that will be looking into that as part of the sector plan here for historic preservation purposes, we have the criteria in 24A to consider.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Soderberg or for staff? No? No? Yes, Ms. Bello.
I would just like to make one clarification from the testimony from Germantown Historical Society about the nature of the request in front of us. The testimony that was received, and if I'm mischaracterizing it, then I apologize, was asking the commission to forward this as, to make an affirmative recommendation that this be a contributing resource to a larger Germantown Historic District. That was not the request that was considered, and that's not what staff put together for you tonight. The request was for the individual consideration of this property as a master plan historic site. And that is how we have applied our analysis and our criteria. Opening up the boundaries of the historic district is an entirely different work program item that is not under discussion tonight, nor was that what was advertised as part of your public hearing.
And that is because we were advised by you to do it that way, to nominate it as an individual site.
That is
rather
correct.
than
In our
the-
discussions, I had said that the planning department would likely not support as a work program item reopening the boundaries of the Germantown Master Plan Historic District.
This is Chair Burdett again. Then I have a question. Well, I'm sitting here looking at this 1988 letter of all the property owners who were all in support of being part of the historic district at the time. Now, this is a long time ago.
They're still there.
Yeah. But my question to you, Ms. Soderberg, is have you done a survey of the current property owners along that strip of, along that area around that house to ask them how they feel about their area and their houses, and are they willing to put together a similar letter like this in support of some measure to, I'm not sure what it would be, but again, in support of, would all those residents that are living in the houses now be willing to sign something of a similar nature? And I'm just wondering if the easiest, not easy, but the one thing would be to change the zoning for that property from a CR back to an R.
That would not preclude its demolition and rebuilding.
I understand that, yes. But it's a one-off on that side of the street that is odd.
Rezonings are considered as part of comprehensive master plan amendments. This property is not included within the current Germantown sector plan amendment update. Again, the council just looked at the current zoning in 2019. It is a long and expensive process in Montgomery County to rezone properties. I am by no means an expert on that. My understanding is that it's the current property owner that would need to request such a change from the hearing examiner, not even from the planning board. It's a whole other process, and that there is no process. Again, I could be wrong, but I don't think there is a process for others to request a zoning change on a property that is not theirs, outside of a geographic area master plan amendment.
So this brings us back to the recommendation, or that is what is in front of us, is this house a master plan site? Comes up to the level of a master plan site,
Yes,
or getting it back. It's not on the locational atlas anymore, right?
it is not on the locational
Or
atlas.
getting it back on the locational atlas.
I mean, yes, that is correct. We are here tonight for a locational atlas
Okay.
determination, which is the first step in moving on down the road towards a potential master plan amendment for this as an individual site.
All right, so what we're here to determine is this property worthy of being on the locational atlas?
Yes,
That's
that
all we all have to do.
That was what was advertised for your public hearing and work session this evening.
Okay. If there are no other questions, then we can do our deliberations. Okay, Commissioner Pelletier has a question.
This is Commissioner Pelletier. How much of the original material of the house is remaining?
That, in terms of the
Original
the exterior,
construction.
so the exterior siding is likely underneath the vinyl siding. The windows have been removed. There used to be a standing seam metal porch roof that's now asphalt shingle. We only have pictures of this house dating back to the 1980s, or the earliest one that staff had access to. So, I think the form of the house is intact overall. There's not, there's no major additions to it or alterations outside of the fenestration and the siding being covered with vinyl.
Okay, and this is bank-owned right now?
Excuse me?
Is it bank-owned?
Yes, the bank presently owns the house.
Okay, thank you.
May I answer the chairman's question from before about how many of the current homeowners?
I would appreciate that, yes, thank you.
Well, it was just that 3 of those couples on there are still living in the same house.
Thank you. Commissioner Haynes, do you have a question?
Only to sort of understand, so the bank now has it, if we vote to recommend putting it on the locational atlas and it goes, and the planning board concurs, then the property may sit for a while. Just understand that the bank now can't tear it down. It's being protected. It has to get sold to somebody who wants to come in and really renovate the house. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, the locational atlas, right, there's a provision in it that you can apply for demolition permit, and we have to hear it as a master plan historic site. There's no new information likely we're going to find on this. It's not like we have another repository to look at of information. So pretty much the designation staff report you have today is what would be provided to you for the master plan review of this property at that time. And, we try as staff not to let properties linger on the locational atlas anymore. That is a goal of the Historic Preservation Commission, we've been trying to tackle. And so we would likely try to resolve this outstanding locational atlas property as expeditiously as possible.
And remind me, and I think I have an understanding, but let's say we do get it back on the locational atlas, it sits around for 10 years, nothing happens, continues to deteriorate, then we might at that point choose to take it off the atlas because it's deteriorated to a point where it's no longer structurally sound, significant. What's the process of getting it off? It has to be recommended by HPC to remove it and then approved by the planning board.
We would not let it linger on the locational atlas. If the planning board were to make a recommendation, or if the planning board were to approve its listing to the locational atlas, part of that is that they are then to direct that a master plan amendment go forward. And we would take the staff time and we would move on that so as not to let this linger. This property was considered once already. So this is, in a sense, kind of a second bite at the apple, looking at it as part of the district. Now we're looking at it individually. But property owners deserve certainty about the final disposition of their assets. So we would take this through then as a master plan amendment to let the council have their say as soon as possible and to not let it linger.
Thank you.
So this is Chair Burdett. So really, and the staff have found that it doesn't rise to the master plan site level.
That's our recommendation, but
That's your recommendation. If it were considered along with the other properties along that side of the street, which are for the most part still original structures, does that become something else? Does that become something where it's more definable as a portion of a community as a whole at a historic point in time, or, early 20th century, late 1800s, early 20th century, on this road at this time, and this house is one of a half a dozen.
So I don't want to speculate too much.
Okay.
But the HPC and the planning board did find that this portion of the block merited inclusion in the district 35 some odd years ago. And then the council made a determination for their reasons that it did not. It is political. It is always political. That is the way every historic designation process is set up in every community across the country, that it is ultimately a political decision by the elected body, whomever that may be. In the intervening years, there have been other rezonings. There is more growth and development pressure at the MARC rail station that has just been reaffirmed by, by additional master plans. I could easily see, potentially that the staff could find that there is a larger Germantown historic district that meets the designation criteria, absent all other planning recommendations or zoning recommendations. The HPC could affirm that. Would the planning board affirm that? Doing this all over again? Maybe, maybe not. Would the council? I would speculate that that is even less likely, that the council would want to revisit this and then would reverse their decision from so many years ago. It's possible, sure. I mean, it well could be possible, but I do not find that plausible.
Thank you.
But I'll also say, but thank you for the question, but I'll say as well that speculating about the political disposition of the district one way or the other, could it, or could it be torn down, or the value of the real estate, all of these things, they're not within our lane. They're not in my lane. They're not in the staff's lane, nor in the HPC's for the purpose of this public hearing.
I have a question then. One last question. If we say, no, we're not putting it back on the locational atlas, would that preclude the Germantown Historical Society from then coming back and saying, we have all these property owners that want to create their own Germantown sub-historic district, or, come back as a group in support of their community? And I'm not saying how they do it or anything like that. I'm just saying, can they come back for another bite of the apple as a larger group?
So when it comes to new properties or new work program items like that for districts, John and I have been out to several neighborhoods to discuss potentially creating new historic districts. These are places that are already listed to the National Register for the most part. But like when Potomac Overlook came to us and we're asking for some assistance against teardowns, my feedback to them was that they needed to show, demonstrated support within that area for us to then bring to the planning director. The planning director and the council set our work program. So I'd asked for that majority support, which we had an overwhelming majority of homeowners who signed a petition requesting that we take on the district designation as part of our work program, presented that to the planning director, who approved that we proceed with that. And so we did, and that's what I've been advising the other districts to do. Ultimately it comes down to the work program. But conceivably, maybe, yes.
All right. Are there any last questions by the commission to the applicant or to staff? Because if not, then we will start our deliberation. Would somebody like to start? Commissioner Galway.
This is Commissioner Galway. First of all, thank you for a very thorough presentation, and thank you for the testimony. Couple thoughts. We may very well be voting against whether this building stays or goes, and I think that's something that we have to think about. as we deliberate and as we put together a motion and vote. I don't really necessarily, looking back and listening to the discussion, I don't understand why the council did what they did many years ago by restricting the zone. It seems to me to be going in the wrong direction. But it was and it is, and we're not here today to talk about changing that. We're here to talk about, whether or not this home really belongs on the locational atlas in an effort to go to the next step. Yes, you can, 24A can be interpreted, and there are various ways of looking at it. When I look at this, I think that the vernacular can be extraordinary, and I don't think that it has to be detailed in such an elaborate way or have an enormous, very specific history. I think there's a lot of history with this home. It may not all come together in a very perfect way, but I think there's an awful lot of history in the home, in the area. And so I think at the end of the day, although I do respect staff, your reasoning for saying that it doesn't belong on the locational atlas, I think personally I would take exception to that, and I would vote that it would go back on the locational atlas. Thanks.
Commissioner Haynes.
I tend to agree with what was stated. I think there's enough local history. We have the handing over the property by local members of the community. We have a local builder. The house architecturally is representative of a vernacular structure of the time. Even if it has been modified, it hasn't been, as was noted, modified to a point where it can't be restored to its original details. So I tend to agree that I would support recommending this to the planning board for the local atlas, locational atlas.
Thank you. Commissioner Dominiani.
Well, thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you for your testimony as well. I tend to agree that, and to disagree actually with some of the staff findings with regards to the designation criteria. I'm hearing a compelling story about the importance of this to Germantown's community. I'm familiar with those roads up there as well in that neighborhood. And yeah, it does boggle the mind, the decisions made in the 80s not to include a few of these structures on the other streets there. From architectural and design significance, many of my favorite historic structures around this county are not necessarily the best or first examples of any exceptional architectural feature or building method or something else. And I agree that the modifications we've seen to this home, such as changing the standing seam metal roof on the porch to asphalt and altering some of the windows, are not irreparable damage. In fact, I think there's probably a potential developer or purchaser out there who would want to restore some of those, and I think it'd be very easy to bring this back into looking and feeling like a historic structure like we see elsewhere in the county. So with that in mind, I think I would also think very hard about, instead of denying the listing, re-adding it to the locational atlas, an index of historic sites. It's a great example of something that we might be able to put back on there before it's gone. I think that's worth consideration. Thank you.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Put my 2 cents worth in. I think I tend to agree with what all the other commissioners have said. I think it's easy to look at this house and say, well, it's not a master plan site. Like, it doesn't rise to master plan site. But when I saw the pictures in the presentation, I couldn't understand why we weren't approving it, for putting it back on the master plan. And I think it's very expeditious to look at these more simple houses and see them as a tear down, especially when it's right near the train, and there's a lot of pressure to develop these areas and up the density, but once you tear it down, it's gone. And I I sort of am inclined to agree. I do think it's a great report, and very thorough, and appreciate your testimony. But I think there is a compelling story here, and I would be. I just feel like my conscience wouldn't let me sort of take it down at this point. So I would support putting this back on the atlas. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is Chair Burdett. I'll close this up. And thank you for the staff for a really good report on a confusing history. And thank you, Ms. Soderberg, for your testimony as well. And I'm rather surprised by my commissioners and the so far unanimous support for keeping this on the locational atlas. And they're going to help me make my argument as well, in that in our time on this commission, we have all seen properties that have turned out to be much more worthy than they were ever expected to be back in the 1970s or the 80s or 90s, because our perceptions, our attitudes have changed about what is important and what is significant. It isn't necessarily the biggest, fanciest, most beautifully done house. Sometimes they're very common houses or businesses or shacks or log cabins or roads, all sorts of things all over the county. And in just the last few months, we have discussed the Horad House, which by itself, it's just a little brick, 1930s, 40s brick house. And by itself, it would never stand out. And yet it is a significant property because not only who the owners were, Elsie and Romeo Horad, amazing people, but because the house, the way the property was acquired by their great-grandparents and subdivided again and subdivided again so that each generation could have built their own house there. So this property here, just because it's a small vernacular, doesn't mean it doesn't have merit. Now, it may not have ever had anybody who was famous back in the day or someone who's famous now, but it was part of that chain of ownership throughout the history of the county. Small houses for people who could afford a house was an expensive thing at that time, but they could afford a house, but it's still a very small house. And with all the discussion we have now in this county about affordable housing, the idea that we would sit there and look at this house, a small house, an affordable house, a starter home, and willfully allow it to go towards a future where it will be torn down and replaced with something that won't be affordable, makes no sense to me. When we have properties that are part of our history and could continue to be part of our history and would actually serve a public good now, then I think it's worth keeping those properties. So I, too, support putting it back on the locational atlas. And let's hear it again, and it's going to have to go up, and let's make a case for it to go up. And I hope that the neighbors can join the fight this time. Now, once a week, I go to Gaithersburg, and when I come back, I drive down through Gaithersburg, past the train station, past the new multifamily development, not quite looking historic, although they think they tried. And then I go down further down, and I go past all these little houses, used to be houses, and now they're small businesses. And quite a few of them are quite nice looking. And they should be houses. They should be homes. They shouldn't be a pest business and a whatever different businesses they are. They're there, they're still standing, but it's just a shame that they're not homes for families. So I would, again, support this property staying. And do we take a vote for this? I forget.
Yes, you'll need to make, since the HPC is not agreeing with staff's recommendation, you'll need to, I put on on your screens, the designation criteria. So you'll have to state which designation criteria it meets and substantiate why it meets each of those criteria.
I'd be happy to make a motion that the Historic Preservation Commission recommend to the Planning Board that the Wilson and Charlotte Jordan House be listed on the Locational Atlas and Index of Historic Site based on 24A3(1)D, that it exemplifies local, cultural, economic, social, political, historic heritage of the county and its community. 24A3(2)A and E. I believe it does embody distinctive characteristics of a type, period, and method of construction for the period, and that it represents an established and familiar visual feature of the neighborhood, community, and county due to its singular physical characteristics. We do know, in support of 3(1)D, we know that it was had a long history of local involvement with the community. It was built by a local builder. Architecturally, it represents a architectural type familiar of the period and the area. And I think it was certainly part of a larger architectural style of the community and neighborhood, and a recognized structure over a significant period of time.
That was a motion, right? Okay, do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Pelletier. I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? And there are no abstentions. The motion is approved.
So we have this item scheduled for the July 10th Planning Board. We'll need to have a letter from the commission and somebody to show up to testify, and then Ms. Soderberg, anybody from Germantown Historical Society will need to sign up in advance to testify for the July 10th meeting. July 10th is when it's coming to Planning Board. Thank you.
And Ms. Ballo, the commission would like the staff to prepare the letter, and we will review it.
In this instance, because there is a difference of opinion, the commissioners, well, I'm happy to format it on our letterhead.
Okay.
But you should write it, circulate it, and then you can give us the final. I'll put it on the letterhead, and then I can submit that as your testimony.
We will do that. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Next, we move back to where we usually start, which is the hops. And let's see, have the work permits been duly advertised?
Yes, Madam Chair, they were advertised in the May 28th edition of the Washington Times.
Thank you. If there's anyone here to testify for any of the cases, please give the speaker form, which is right down there, to the staff if you haven't already, and they will let us know you're here to address one of the cases. If not, we are going to begin by expediting the cases we believe can be expedited. Hold on, can be expedited based on staff reports. If you give me 1 minute. All right. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to case 2B at 509 Philadelphia Avenue, Tacoma Park, 2C at 9 Primrose Street, Chevy Chase, 2D at 20 West Kirk Street, Chevy Chase, 2E next to 4600 Waverly Avenue, Garrett Park, 2G at 7103 Cedar Avenue, Tacoma Park, 2H at 7101 Cedar Avenue, Tacoma Park, 2I at 6 High Street, Brookville, 2K at 7310 Baltimore Avenue, Tacoma Park, and 2L at 7012 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park.
Madam Chair, hearing no objections, I move that we approve the following historic area work permits in accordance with staff reports based upon the record before us, in consideration of the recommendations of the local advisory panels and including the conditions recommended by staff. Hop number 1111550 at 509 Philadelphia Avenue, Tacoma Park. Hop number 1001603 revised at 9 Primrose Street, Chevy Chase. Hop number 1116733 at 20 West Kirk Street, Chevy Chase. Hop number 1117069 next to 4600 Waverly Avenue, Garrett Park. Hop number 1117840 at 7103 Cedar Avenue, Tacoma Park. Hop number 1118075 at 7101 Cedar Avenue, Tacoma Park. Hop number 1117972 retroactive at 6 High Street, Brookville. Hop number 1118459 at 7310 Baltimore Avenue, Tacoma Park. And hop number 1110140 at 7012 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park.
Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Damiani. I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. No, in no nays and no abstentions, these hops are approved unanimously. So if you have any questions, you can speak to staff during regular business hours, and we appreciate the work that was done to preserve these properties and in working with staff to submit easily approvable work permits. We will now hear two hop cases. Hop number 2A at 23345 Frederick Road in Clarksburg. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is. This is Laura DePasquale with the staff. This is HOP Review 1115052 for alterations to 23345 Frederick Road, Clarksburg. The subject property is a corner lot with a circa 1856 house known as the Old Parsonage and is listed as a contributing resource in the Clarksburg Historic District. The project is subject to review under the Vision of Clarksburg, Chapter 24A, the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, and Policy Number 2401. The applicants propose to make numerous exterior modifications, including reconstructing the front and rear porches and stairways, altering side and rear window and door openings, replacing the siding and roof, adding new exterior vents and condensing units, and creating a new exterior areaway. Staff generally supports the proposed alterations and recommends approval with some conditions. Staff notes that the property appears to have had numerous alterations prior to designation, including construction of the existing full-width porch, removal of a two-story side porch piazza along the southeast side of the rear L, partial reconstruction of the chimneys in CMU, and installation of aluminum trim and siding over Dutch lap wood siding. I'll reference this photo a few times, but this is a circa 1913 photo that shows a sort of one bay front gabled porch and the two-story side porch. So at the front, the applicants propose to substantially rebuild the existing post-1913 porch, repairing the masonry column or piers and cladding them with new brick veneer, installing new painted AZEK columns, fascia brackets, and TimberTech railings, as well as Aratus flooring and new standing seam roofing. Staff finds that the existing porch is not original and that its modification should be treated with leniency, provided the changes are compatible with the resource and district per Chapter 24A8D and Standard 9. Per the Vision of Clarksburg, one-story front porches with simple wood columns are a common feature on what it identifies as vernacular I-houses, such as 23345 Frederick Road. Staff finds that the existing front porch is in poor condition and must be substantially rebuilt. Staff finds that the general details of the proposed porch with 4 squared posts, squared balusters, and a standing seam metal roof is compatible with the property per Chapter 24A8B2 and Standard 9, but that the details should be further simplified to be in keeping with the character of the building. Staff recommends that the cornice brackets on the front porch be eliminated and the newel posts eliminated or replaced with planar 4x4 posts with minimal caps, so as not to add conjectural features that create a false sense of historical development and runs contrary to the standards. Staff finds that the proposed AZAC trim and posts and TimberTech railings should be replaced with wood, which if pressure treated should be painted after a curing period per Chapter 24A8B2, but that the proposed erratus porch flooring and stair treads are consistent with policy number 2401, provided the flooring is run perpendicular to the facade. Staff notes that the dimensions and proportions of the front posts varies visually throughout the application, but that the proposed first floor plan identifies a dimension of 4 1/8 inches in width, which staff finds to be an appropriate square dimension for the porch posts, or up to 5 inches square. Along the southeast side of the rear L, the applicants propose to substantially rebuild the existing side porch, which staff finds is not original, having replaced the 2-story side porch visible in the 1913 photograph. The porch would receive new AZAC composite columns and trim and a standing seam metal roof. Likewise, along the rear, the applicants would rebuild the existing non-historic wood egress stair and landing, replacing them with AZAC posts, columns, trim, risers, and handrails with erratus treads and decking. It does appear that the stair gets slightly wider than existing, I assume owing to code compliance. Staff finds that since the existing features are not original, an exact replication of the earlier features is not necessary, but that the proposal should be compatible with the character of the property per 24A8B2 and Standard 9. As with the front porch, staff recommends the details of the rear porch, stair, and landing be simplified to be more in keeping with the vernacular character of the building and to avoid creating a false sense of history per the standards. Staff recommends that all posts be approximately 4 to 5 inches square and that the landing posts replicate the simple style of the proposed rear stair railing newel posts. Staff notes that the first floor rear posts supporting the landing above are not dimensioned, but likewise should be 4 to 5 inches square if structurally sufficient, or a maximum of 4 inches square with no ornamentation. Staff finds that the proposed AZAC trim and post end TimberTech railings should be replaced with wood per Chapter 24A8B2, but that the proposed erratus flooring and stair treads is consistent with policy 2401. On the southeast side elevation of the rear L, the applicants propose to remove the existing first floor door and 2 existing second floor windows, one of which is a 2/2 window and one of which is 6/6 wood window. And on the rear elevation of the rear L, the applicants propose to modify a non-historic first floor window opening and to replace the existing wood door at the second floor with both with 2 new wood doors. Staff finds that the Secretary of the Interior's rehabilitation guidelines recommends adding new window openings on rear or secondary or less visible elevations if required by a new use. New openings and windows in them should be compatible with the overall design of the building, but in most cases not duplicate the historic fenestration. Staff finds that the proposed locations are minimally visible from the public right-of-way and would meet these guidelines, as well as Chapter 24A8B1. Staff finds that the proposed Marvin Elevate fiberglass windows and 3/4 light wood doors have traditional profiles that would be generally compatible with the resource per Standard 9, but that wood windows would be the appropriate compatible material for use on the L per Chapter 24A8B2. As currently presented, the application proposes 2/2 window at the first floor and a 1/1 window at the second floor. Staff recommends that both new windows have the same configuration, either 1/1 or 2/2. Okay. Throughout the building, the applicants propose to replace the existing wood textured aluminum siding with 8-inch exposure fiber cement siding. While conducting a site visit to the property, staff found a section of narrower exposure Dutch lap siding underneath the aluminum siding where the porch fascia has been removed. Staff finds that the aluminum siding predates designation, but that it appears to cover the original wood siding with a narrower exposure. Staff finds that the removal of the aluminum siding and restoration or in-kind replacement of the wood Dutch lap siding to match the dimensions, texture, profile, and appearance of the historic wood siding would be the appropriate treatment per Standard 6 and Chapter 24A8B2. The restoration of the wood siding would also be eligible for the county historic preservation tax credit. Okay. The applicants also proposed to replace the existing roofing with new McElroy Metals 138T Galvalume standing seam roofing with 1.375-inch seams and 16-inch exposure. The existing roofing is unusual. No one on our staff was familiar with other properties with this particular roofing type, which appears to be a low-profile standing seam metal panel system embossed with a shingle pattern, so essentially a hybrid of standing seam metal roofing and pressed metal shingles. The existing front roof has 17 panels across and the approximately 34-foot wide main roof. So staff finds that the proposed roofing shows evidence of rust and extreme wear, and that if original to the building has likely far exceeded its predicted service life. As such, staff finds the severity of deterioration warrants replacement per Standard 6, but that an in-kind replacement would be extremely difficult, and recommends approval of a compatible roofing material. The Vision of Clarksburg identifies standing seam metal roofs as common throughout the district, so staff recommends that a low-profile standing seam metal with a maximum of 1-inch seams and 18 to 20-inch exposure to more closely replicate the dimensions of the existing roofing would be the most appropriate replacement roofing. Staff recommends the HPC condition the replacement on the applicants providing detailed photographic documentation of the roofing and encourage the applicants to donate a small section of the roof to the Historic Preservation Office for future reference. Finally, along the northwest side elevation, visible from Frederick Road and Spire Street, the applicants propose to cut a new set of doors in the foundation wall, accessed by a new areaway, enclosed with a timber retaining wall, and to install a new concrete mechanical pad and condensing unit enclosure, as well as to install 2 vents on the rear elevation. No information has been provided on the doors to be installed in the opening in the foundation. Staff finds that although the equipment enclosure would be visible from the public right-of-way, the proposed location is along a secondary elevation and would not obscure or damage any historic materials or character-defining features of the property per Standard 2. Staff finds that the timber retaining wall is compatible with the resource per 24A8B2, but requests additional details on the areaway door and recommends the HPC condition the approval on submission of an elevation detail of the modified foundation wall at the proposed areaway, including the proposed egress doors. Staff finds the vents on the rear will not substantially alter the exterior features of the resource per Chapter 24A8B1. So finally, to kind of summarize the conditions that staff would recommend, we recommend approval with 7 conditions: that the front and rear porch columns, railings, and trim must be painted wood. The porch columns must be no larger than 4 to 5 inches square. The front stair newel posts must be eliminated or replaced with plain 4-inch posts with minimal caps to match the proposed rear stair newel posts. The rear landing support columns must be simplified square wood posts and the minimum size required by code. The front porch flooring must be run perpendicular to the facade. The proposed windows on the southeast elevation must be wood and both be the same configuration with either 1/1 or 2/2 simulated divided lights. The original wood siding must be repaired or replaced in kind with 5-inch exposure Dutch lap wood siding. The standing seam metal roofing must have maximum 1-inch seams, 1-inch crimped ridge caps, and 18 to 20-inch exposure. The applicants must provide detailed photographs of the existing roofing to the Historic Preservation Office for the property file, and the applicant is encouraged but not required to provide a small physical sample of the roofing to the Historic Preservation Office for its archive. And finally, that the applicant must provide an elevation detail of the modified foundation wall at the proposed areaway, including the proposed egress door. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Galway.
This is Commissioner Galway. Thank you for that. Was there anything in the document that I might have missed in terms of the type of privacy fencing for that HVAC, for the condensing units? I just saw it said privacy fencing, and that could be plastic, it could be wood, it could be metal, it could be all sorts of things. I don't know if you...
That is a good point.
I'll ask the
I had been assuming that it was wood, but I will...
Okay, thanks.
We can ask the applicant. They're here tonight.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Pelletier?
This is Commissioner Pelletier. Is that roof original?
I don't know for sure. It does have characteristics that would be, common of mid to late 19th century roofing, so it seems plausible that it might be, but it is.
Super weird.
It is. It's really unusual.
Yeah, I was just curious. Thanks.
Commissioner Dominiani?
This is Commissioner Damiani. I had a related question about the roofing. When you say putting a sample in the archives, do you mean of this original roof as we see it here?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, like cutting a little piece of it, if they're up for that.
If there are no more questions, thank you very much for your in-depth report and research and analysis. There's applicants for this case. If you'd like to come forward, Javier Nogales and Michael Rouse. If you'd please have a seat, make sure the mics are turned on to green, and then for the record, introduce yourselves and your relationship to this application.
Sure. Good evening, Commission. My name is Michael Rouse. I'm the principal architect at MPR Architecture, and I'm the architect for the project.
Good evening. My name is Javier Nogales. I'm the owner of the property.
Thank you. Thank you for coming forward. This is rather interesting that your house is almost like the house we were talking about earlier, and here you are restoring it and going through quite a lot to restore it as it is. You have, I believe, 7 minutes to make a presentation. You can say whatever you like. You can explain it or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, thank you. I won't take up the 7 minutes after quite an interesting first session you guys had. To answer your question, Commissioner Galway, the idea would be that that's a cedar lattice that's in the privacy fencing. And I believe the staff had a question regarding the egress door. That would just be a simple kind of shaker panel egress kind of panel. And our permit drawings will have that spread out, laid out. The one question we do have about the staff report was in regards to the siding. Dutch lap wood siding for my client is going to be quite a big expense, and so he was looking to do a 5.5 inch. We can change the exposure hardy siding to at least make the building look better. I'm sure we could also install that over the existing siding to keep the historical character that's there. But at this time, my client's not going to be able to do the Dutch lap siding, and so that's why we're coming to you tonight. If the hardy is not allowed, we would just simply like to leave the existing siding as it is, make repairs as needed, and when the time comes down the road when money is available to do the exterior siding, then take that on at that point. But we just wanted to clarify that amongst the commission and amongst the staff report, that if the hardy was not an option, we are okay to leave the existing siding, repair it in kind, and then move forward with the project. Did I summarize that pretty well? Okay.
That's it? Wow. That whole long list, I thought there'd be more issues. Commissioner Pelletier.
Hello, Mr. Rouse. I have a question. What kind of shape is the aluminum in?
It's not in the greatest shape in, I don't know, 50% of the building probably, so there will probably have to be some repair done to it.
Can you still get that stuff?
Yeah, I would say we can still find something similar, comparable, not exact, but comparable.
Okay, that's one question. The other question is, how does the aluminum is over the original siding, so you don't really know the condition of the original siding, right?
Go ahead. I was going to say the only part that I saw was in the porch, and
Right.
it looked like it had never been painted, so it was kind of that gray, aged
It
wood
looks
look.
pretty good.
That part looks good.
Well,
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
that's like 3 boards.
I think some of the corners were in really bad shape.
Yeah, I'm a little familiar from the interior, which it shows on a lot of places, it shows already the aluminum siding. That means on a lot of places, the Dutch is already gone, like the original siding is gone and
Okay.
rotted over time. So although the original definitely is probably, if the aluminum siding is 50% like bad, like the original probably is like 80% down. Like some places are just holding by the aluminum siding actually.
Right, okay. And my other question is about how the trim currently, is the trim original around the windows and the doors?
The trim appears to be kind of Grecian inspired, right? With the cap on the top and all that kind of stuff. And I think it, at least there was in the 1913s photo from the side, you could still see it. I
Oh,
believe.
the sort of,
Yeah, the triangular kind of pedimented tops.
right.
The intention is to leave as much of that in place or to restore it, you know, replace in kind.
Well, I guess my question is, how does it relate, the face of the trim, how does it relate to the face of the siding? Is it all flush?
No,
Because,
the J channel does come out a little bit from the trim, right? If the trim is 5/4 and you've got 3/4 back there, and then you've got this aluminum on front,
right.
it's almost flush or proud of the trim probably.
And you're not planning on really changing that
Not
relationship?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Okay.
And the Hardy wouldn't change it either, actually.
Wouldn't,
Because the Hardy would be placed right on top of the existing.
so
siding.
if you did the Hardy, you were saying you would just take off the aluminum?
Yeah.
Is leaving the existing to appease us, or
No,
would you
it's actually
rather?
structural. It's the
Oh,
sheathing.
oh, it's the sheathing. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Could I have some time on
Oh,
myself?
yes.
Yes. I think I mentioned the inspector, Laura, that we do own few, or at least one property of historical on New Market, Maryland, Frederick, which is 1900s. It's a Victorian. We also bought it on a very, very bad shape and restored. We spent thousands and thousands of dollars to bring to what it is. And it has a lot of details on it. And we're very happy with that. And we are, I would say, 90% to finish. We're still working on some details interiorly. However, I appreciate the comments and the suggestions from the staff to what keep a little more simple, which I would probably agree, but the fact that on the neighborhoods, like on like front of the street, there is nice houses with a lot of details on it, and we would like to mimic a little bit like that it will go with the neighborhood. The original design that we proposed, it will have a little more details on it, which the staff say like, no, it's too much, which we agree, we kind of scale down, but now we are getting a little more scaling down to that. Now, I'm a big fan of historical as well, and I agree that something shouldn't be like kind of fake and look at fake, but at the same time, I feel like what we're proposing is it goes with the neighborhood on the houses around. If we're making this investment to recover this house to bring to show a little more historical, we would like to make it, I mean, properly to look like harmonious with the neighborhood.
Thank you. I have a question then for staff. Simply because the window surrounds are kind of interesting and have more detail to it, and the roof is extraordinary. How much do we know about what is currently existing, like the porch post and the lack of railing? Is it possible that there was that little porch at the time, so is it possible there could have been more detail on this property that just got lost along the way?
Well, there were certainly, I mean, you can see in this photo, if you kind of look real close, the existing window trim. You can see kind of how it goes up there a little bit. So, you know, the Vision of Clarksburg identifies this as in the vernacular iHouse section of the architectural styles, for better or worse. It doesn't really get into Greek Revival, which I feel like this building has Greek Revival detailing of, and the sort of a transitional period architecturally. So you have these smaller brackets up here as it transitioned from the dentils of Greek Revival to the brackets of Italianate. You've got some detailing to the window surrounds, 4-panel door, 6/6 windows could either be original or they might be a later revival style. But we do know that this porch is not original. We do know that the side porch is not original. So our intention with the staff recommendations was to keep the design simple so that it isn't trying to look like one of the neighboring Victorian houses, and knowing that it is not replicating the historic features that were there pre-1913.
Understood. I'm kind of looking at that photograph, the 1913 one, and it's a little hard to tell what you see, but on that little porch, it does look like, am I seeing a little fence post, or am I seeing the base of a more elaborate base to the column of one of the porch posts?
This here?
Yeah.
That, I think that's forward in view than the house.
Okay.
In looking kind of closely at this, I did wonder whether the posts were turned, since there seems to be some shadow lines on the center of the posts and then sort of smoother bases.
As in they could possibly have been round?
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
centers.
I mean, that would make more sense. I mean, if you take the existing porch away and put back the little porch and start thinking about how the detailings would have worked, it would have been, probably had some more detailing to it. And for whatever reason, after 1913, at some point, that little porch went away, probably to provide shade, or they just wanted more space outside. I mean, obviously, that picture is later, right? That's 1990s.
Right.
And those posts are completely different, the blue ones. So, and obviously the railing is there, it's just not code. So obviously there had been a railing for whatever that is, and there had been other posts. So they can do something a little more, just kind of keep it in the realm of reason. Is that kind of it?
I think there's a real balance with this house, and that's where you see a lot of the staff recommendations come down, and I think that you could, easily come down the other way. Looking at that porch, whether it's original to the house or shortly thereafter, is probably within the period of significance, has a little pediment on the front. It clearly seems to be part of that Greek Revival transition architecture out here in this very rural part of the county. The details, the original details we have on this house are finely rendered for where it is, this very interesting roof. Seen a lot of metal roofs, haven't seen, stamped sheets like this before, the dentils, the window surrounds. So in talking with the applicant too and understanding that cost is a concern, cost is always a concern. With the staff recommendations, we really focused on preserving what original materials there are there that we can substantiate the siding. We didn't ask them to go with a barrage Victorian stamped shingle, so we didn't ask for a new stamped shingle roof. It'll be a simpler metal roof, but one that we feel that fits in the vocabulary. And it was really a judgment call then, I think, about the porch. We don't want to design this for the applicant, so our recommendation was to simplify it. That was our impulse, but I could certainly see if the commission wanted to take a different impulse with it. We don't have a good image to tell them to restore it to something. All we have is this much smaller little pedimented entryway from this earlier photo from 100+ years ago to go on. So it would be speculative. But, a simpler one is clearly new, something a little, that would be in keeping. And if the commission wanted to send them in another direction that you think would fit as well, that's what we're here for.
Okay, if you could bring up their elevation, their proposed elevation.
So this is from this proposal. They did send to staff previous iterations that had kind of paired columns and renderings of kind of larger, I'd say, columns than what is shown in this application.
What are the width of these columns that you're showing in this elevation?
I believe this is the elevation after we got the initial comments from staff, so I believe these are closer to maybe 5 inches. I mean, we're considering a very simple kind of Doric post here. We're trying to, we want to be a good neighbor, obviously. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful stuff, as Javier was saying, in the street, and we want to add some detail. Obviously, the porch is not original. It seems to me maybe an interesting thing was the double-decker porch probably provided a nice cool place in the summer, and then that rotted away, and they ripped it down and wanted a bigger porch, so they put it on the front. Maybe. So I think, you know, our main concern was about the siding, obviously. We're very happy with, I think Javier's just seen this as well. I don't want to speak too much for you, but I think he's pretty happy with still keeping the traditional detailing that we have going on. It fits for the house, I think it fits for the neighborhood.
Yeah, I feel the posts are fine. I mean, if you're telling me that's a 5-inch wide, looks more like 7, maybe 8, but 5 would be good, maybe 5.5. I could go up to 6. I'm okay with a small capital crown at the beam. I think it's simple enough and understated. I might suggest simplifying as staff has suggested, simplifying the railing newel posts. Maybe the cap can be something not quite as molded. Simplify that, and then I think that would be in keeping. Maybe the railing. I don't know how wide the railing is. It probably does need to butt into the newel post versus going over top of the newel post. But if it could go over top, that could be a little bit simpler and cleaner. But certainly just simplifying the post, newel post cap, I think would do it. With regard to siding, doesn't Hardy make a Dutch lap siding in their artisan series? And wood, I guess.
Sorry, this is Commissioner Pelletier. Isn't the artisan a thicker panel?
It is slightly thicker than the standard lap siding.
Yeah, I thought it was like
Because of that,
3/4.
Well, it's only like, it might be a strong 1/2 inch, 5/8.
Oh,
max,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering about how it's going to relate with the existing trim if they start putting thicker stuff on the siding. Not that I don't disagree, not that I do agree with you
But,
as far as
yeah,
the product goes, but I just wonder if it's going to create some weird
some
shadow
issues.
lines and conditions, yeah.
Exactly.
But I think the profile with the existing aluminum siding probably will be the same profile with the Hardy. As far as when it's installed, it's going to be exact same profile. As a matter of fact, then however is overlapping or the seams with the trim around the windows is going to be exactly the same thing. So I don't think it's going to be other change as far as look. And let me say, unfortunately, we make a big mistake here. Like we didn't consider like the Dutch siding behind that, and we got the siding because we know we're already working into getting some repairing and things like that on this, and we never, no, at least I never considered that it would be a Dutch siding behind, and now we kind of guide to get back to that. But we have the material, and with all the expense that we're putting into this house. Adding a Dutch siding and not using what I have as a material is going to be another impact. And that's why, as Michael was saying, like if we can use the Hardy siding, we're probably going to hold on the siding and leave it as is for who knows when. Our intentions are to restore this the best we can. and I hope we can have some flexibility here to work with us.
And just from my understanding, there's no sheathing. The Dutch lap is the siding and the sheathing together, okay?
That's correct.
This is Chair Burdett. So again, other than that little bit of the siding that you see up above, the other siding, you really don't know the condition of that Dutch lap underneath, whether it's in any good shape. Although you said there were some areas that it obviously is rotted out because there is no sheathing underneath it, which is an issue. How are you going to insulate the walls, by the way? And excuse us, there's a bunch of architects up here, so we start getting into the weeds.
We're going to have to prep it for close cell and fur in on the inside. We're not going to be able to get any exterior insulation on it.
Really hate closed cell. It is.
I know, but it works in a great spot like this.
I know, but
That's not the HBC's purview.
I know it, but.
Let's stick
okay,
to topic, please.
All right. Any other questions for our?
Questions or comments?
Well, let's do comments. Yeah. Would you like to go?
This is Commissioner Pelletier. I think your elevation's nice. I mean, I think it's appropriate. Saying it's nice isn't really relevant, but I do think it's appropriate. But except for the dentals on the porch, I feel like it's getting a little Disneyland with those, and they're unnecessary because that's a detail on the existing house that you kind of want to accentuate. So I'm just thinking the dentals create a false historicism, as they're talking about. But I did have one other question about the siding. If some of this must be a quandary for you because it's the sheathing, right? So you can't take it all off or the house will fall down. But you said some of it's not in good, some of it's not in good shape. So how are you going to repair?
I think in places where the siding is not in great shape and it's structurally insufficient, we're going to have to put in some plywood to complete that. So
From the inside? If
yeah,
you're,
it'd have to be from the outside. The vinyl siding will have to be peeled back.
right, they have to be, right, but he's talking about trying to save the aluminum if
It's going to be, yeah.
right, it's a tricky situation.
Yeah.
Okay, and the hardy that you're proposing is smooth, I assume?
Yes, it is smooth, and you have,
No, I'm sorry, it's not smooth. It has grain. It matches the grain of the existing right now.
what has the grain? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right now, the actual aluminum siding has a grain, and the new Hardy has also grain.
that doesn't make it right, just because the aluminum siding has a grain. That's not necessarily something that you want to replicate. I got to read through these again. If somebody else wants to talk, I would need to read through these conditions again.
Commissioner
I
Dominion?
believe we can actually flip the siding over.
Yeah.
Oh, it's already purchased.
Yeah, we can probably flip the siding over to a smooth face on the back.
It's not pre-colored, it's not pre-painted?
It's going to get painted,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So, and we would do the 5.5-inch exposure to at least nod to the Dutch lap existing.
Do you have specifications of that? Like,
I believe they are we sent those to you in the final selection.
I mean, do you have specifications of the siding flipped and then what that would look like? I'm sorry.
Oh, we can get that for you.
But that's
Yeah.
not that's not really what was presented.
Yeah, I apologize. I
Okay.
didn't realize it was wood green till this evening, so.
No worries.
Commissioner Dominiani?
A question for staff. In places where the applicant would be replacing the rotten or otherwise no good Dutch lap sheathing, do we have other cases? Have we seen this where it's replaced with plywood and then new siding goes over it? Because I guess I'm getting a little confused with replacing kind and kind as maybe recommended versus
Sure, this is a really common condition, that there is existing wood siding underneath aluminum or vinyl siding that is in bad shape and that has been patched, and that is where the siding is also kind of a structural component of the building. Typically it's not all taken off at once, it's taken off in phases, and then, shored up, or plywood is patched in as needed, and then the siding is put back on top of that. So we've seen this is common, that you have wood siding that is not in great shape, that needs patching, that needs plywood, that needs other things to kind of bolster it, and it qualifies for the tax credit, and it is commonly done and commonly required by the commission. So I'm not, if you're asking if I'm concerned by this discussion about the condition of it, I'm not, frankly, because we see this very often, and then we see great outcomes.
This is Chair Burdett. On the same topic, and talking about the tax credits. Okay, so the Hardy is not, doesn't get a tax credit, right?
Correct.
If they used an actual Dutch lap siding, they would get the tax credit, or?
If they restored the wood siding.
If they restored the existing?
If they restored the existing, or if the existing siding, if they could demonstrate that it was deteriorated so much that it could not be repaired, and this is standard in the Secretary, this is the standard language from the Secretary of the Interior, that if the material cannot be repaired, which also happens a lot, then it can be replaced. It can be replaced in kind, and that would qualify for the tax credit.
And in kind would be a wood siding, a wood Dutch lap?
Wood, Dutch lap, same profile.
Okay.
And I believe this area, it might also be in the heritage area. There are grants available within the heritage area, within portions of Clarksburg. Again, cost is not a consideration for you all or for the staff when it comes to the feasibility of the restoration of original building materials. There's also potentially going to be a facade restoration grant coming for the Clarksburg Historic District within the next year or two. There have been discussions about that as well. But to your real question, yes, if they repaired it in kind with wood of the same profile, that would qualify for the tax credit.
Which is 20%.
Which is 25%.
25% of the cost. Okay. And that includes labor or just the materials?
It includes labor and materials and soft costs as well.
Okay. So here's another just to discuss, but they take all the vinyl siding off and they realize that there's some sections of the existing siding that are still good and some that are not. Is it feasible to remove the existing siding that's in good shape and use it elsewhere to create a unified elevation of the original siding that they could then put behind that sheathing, structural sheathing, and then where there isn't anything left, they could, like on the back of the house, they could use their Hardy?
Well, again, that would be up to the commission to decide. In terms of piecing it together,
Yeah.
that's what's going to happen at the Bethesda Community Store, where a lot of the siding is shot, where it's at grade, where there essentially was no foundation of that building. It was just set on the dirt. So you have about 3 to 4 useful feet of siding above. So they are taking the good portions of the siding, they are patching it in the front, and they are using new wood siding, milled to match for the other elevations of the building. Typically, again, for the historic building itself, where we know this is the original building material, what meets the standards in 24A and the Secretary of the Interior standards, where the material is readily available, which wood siding is, the correct treatment is new wood siding. For additions, for new construction, substitute materials are permissible. One of the things we were looking at, for example, with this was on the porch flooring. Because it's not an original porch, we had recommended substitute materials for that porch flooring, since it's a whole new feature. But the siding on the building is not. So the staff would still not recommend hardy plank on any of the elevations But if they were doing an addition, then yes, that is common. But again, what you're proposing, they'd need to come forward, provide the evidence, we'd have the discussion, and then the commission could decide.
Thank you.
May I add something there?
Certainly.
So I'm a builder myself, and I did work on projects in Washington, D.C. In restoration. And although what you're proposing, it could be very logical, and having the fact that the siding is 100 years or plus old, a lot of times that the nails split the siding and rotted over time. So what's been recovered is almost nothing, especially on this house itself with the experience that I have. I just don't see that. But again, it's not something that, I know it's just questions, but on this specific case, I probably just don't even see that road. However, let me just make that comment there. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand that. I was just trying to think of a way to preserve some of that siding and use it on the front face of the building, but it sounds like that you still would need to replace it with something else. I mean, with Dutch slab wood siding. But the fact that there's no sheathing underneath the existing siding is problematic.
It is. Are you asking me?
Well, I guess
there
there was a question they had originally, was like, can they cover the existing siding up? And it becomes the de facto sheathing for the time and they put their new siding over it. But then that's not, you would still require wood siding, yeah.
Well, I'll say one thing. That wasn't the proposal that was, or at least that was not our understanding of the proposal. So we were just looking at the wood goes away entirely and it's hardy plank. If there's another material that's going to be replacing the aluminum and going on top of the wood, we would ask to reconsider that, with Commissioner Pelletier's questions, what is the reveal of that? Is that going to obscure the few original architectural details we have left for this building? Again, that would not be our recommended treatment, but because the wood siding would be essentially preserved underneath that and could potentially in the future be restored. And the hardy plank, to Commissioner Pelletier's point about the detailing and the profiling, obviously the aluminum siding is not great, but putting any new features back on this building should still have some sort of delicacy or lightness to them, like our earlier discussion about these styles that aren't fully formed in these rural villages or areas, but there is a flavor of something there to them. The hardy plank can be really chunky, for lack of a better term, kind of clunky on these buildings. So I don't want to argue against that, only to say if that's the direction of the commission, then we would ask to defer the item to allow them to come back and probably present that to you, because you would I don't know if I would ask you to defer that to staff, because based on the discussion, it seems like you would want to examine those details yourself.
Well, one point against being able to do that is that closed cell insulation, because once you spray that on wood, it doesn't come off. You have to cut it with a knife. And at that point, it is ruining the backside of that historic lap or Dutch lap siding. That's why I don't like closed cell. That and the fact that things can start rotting and you don't see it until it's way too late. And it's not recommended for historic properties. Yes, Commissioner Pelletier.
So, okay, now so is your proposal in here that you were going to take off all the original wood? Oh, so that.
No, we were simply going to remove the aluminum and put up hardy plank.
Okay, and
to be honest, I think we can, if you're comfortable, come back, simply remove the question of siding for now.
Okay.
Say we're going to use the aluminum, remove it from the proposal, because we've got to get a permit, and then come back and continue this discussion on the siding if the commission would be comfortable with that. I think that would solve a lot of problems. We would at least keep the aluminum siding, and then we can come back and revisit the hardy.
So
at a
that
later
would,
date.
that would be your intention on your permit set
Yes.
would be to leave the aluminum?
Leave the aluminum and patch as needed, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Okay, comments, we're back to comments, I think. Okay. I'll go. This is Chair Burdett. Okay, we're gonna skip the siding for now, and we've discussed some of the issues with the siding and the sheathing and the insulation and all that, okay. I say, I think, one, thank you very much for the effort you're putting in to this restoration and how much detail that you've put into this. And we do appreciate the fact that you're doing really well with this so far with your plans. Don't feel compelled to compete with your neighbors, because if they're in Victorian houses were all about excess. Greek Revival is all about simplicity and beauty. And it was such a wonderful period in architecture that it's why we still have buildings that look like that, is because then the Victorians show up and it's gewgaws all over the place, and everyone's like, oh, but that was so nice and calming. So embrace the Greek Revival. It is a wonderful period, and this house is really unique in that it has these detailings, because when you look at it, you're thinking, that's just a vernacular house, and it really isn't. It's got something going on there, and I'm kind of curious what's underneath the vinyl siding. So, aluminum, excuse me. I grew up in an aluminum siding houses. I can tell you, if someone eggs your house, it's really not a good thing to have happen to your aluminum paint on your aluminum siding. But anyhow, other than the siding, and again, simplify some of the detailing. But I think you're in good shape going forward. The railing on the porch looks a little busy with the pickets, but I assume that's purely from code, that they are not more narrow than they have. You know, their spacing is just what they have to be for code, and that is what it is. So we look forward for you to come back with the siding conversation, but other than that, with the staff's conditions, I don't have anything other than that I disagree with. So again, the siding will be back. Commissioner Haynes?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Oh, okay.
If there are no more commissioner comments, I move that the Historic Preservation Commission approve HOP number 115052 at 23345 Frederick Road in Clarksburg, based on the 6 conditions recommended by staff and deferring Condition 5, which is the original wood siding must be repaired or replaced in kind with 5-inch exposed Dutch lap wood siding. We will defer that condition to another time, and all other 6 conditions would stand.
Do I have a second? Or I'll second the motion. All in favor say aye.
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 No nays and no abstentions. So this HOP is approved with that one exception.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and thank you
very much for your time and help.
Thank you for working on this house. Moving on, our next item is to J at 10300 Fawcett Street, Kensington. Is there a staff report?
There is. One moment.
All right. This is Laura DiPasquale with the Historic Preservation staff. This is HOP Review 1118349 for porch floor replacement at 10300 Fawcett Street, Kensington. The subject property is a corner lot with an 1890s house with a rear addition and screened porch approved by the HPC in 1993. The property is listed as a primary resource in the Kensington Historic District and the project is subject to review under the Vision of Kensington, Chapter 24A, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, and Policy Number 2401. A few existing conditions photos showing the condition of the painted wood porch flooring, which the owners have noted they have replaced numerous times in their 30-plus year ownership. As a result, the applicants propose to replace the existing wood porch flooring on both the open wraparound porch and the circa 1993 screened porch with AZEK's TimberTech tongue and groove porch flooring. The applicants have shown here 3 TimberTech samples: coastline, slate gray, and oyster colors. Here's some stock details of the TimberTech flooring showing the different colors and textures available, including the slate gray and oyster colors, which have an overly embossed wood grain texture, and the coastline line that has a minimally embossed texture. Here's an example of installed TimberTech slate gray color at 3927 Prospect Street, Kensington, which the HPC denied retroactive approval of in 2023, finding that wood was the only appropriate replacement material for the primary resource. The steps here were not replaced and are wood. So, staff finds that the Vision of Kensington identifies porches as a character-defining feature of the houses in the district, and that wood is called out as the dominant and preferred building material in the district. Standard 6 states that where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature will match the old in design, color, texture, and where possible, materials. Staff agrees that the existing wood flooring is in poor condition and should be replaced, and understands the applicant's concern about the condition of their current wood porch flooring and the quality of modern porch flooring materials. This issue is also not new to the HPC, which has reviewed several porch replacement projects over the preceding years where porch flooring failed in over only a few years. That led to the adoption of the HPC's policy number 2401 on the appropriateness of substitute materials for porch and deck flooring. This policy states that porch floors on primary resources must be painted wood installed in a historically appropriate manner, i.e. tongue and groove, 2 to 3 inches in width and run perpendicular to the facade, but that replacement flooring on non-historic additions or new construction to primary resources may be considered on a case-by-case basis. Staff had previously recommended the applicants consider thermally modified wood products such as Thermery or Acquia, which would be considered in-kind replacement materials and which would also qualify for the county's 25% and state's 20% rehabilitation tax credits. Staff finds that as a primary resource, wood is the only product considered appropriate under the policy and Chapter 24A8B1 and 2 for the open historic porch, which is the same conclusion the HPC came to during the review for 3927 Prospect Avenue, which is similarly cited and also classified as a primary resource where the HPC denied retroactive approval of the TimberTech slate gray porch flooring. We note that the HPC is not bound by all past proposals, but must look at each case on its merits, and also should not be arbitrary in its judgment of factually similar cases. Evaluating the proposal under Chapter 24A of the County Code, staff finds the proposal to change the wood deck porch flooring to TimberTech is an inappropriate material and recommends the HPC deny this portion of the HOP under 24A8. Staff finds the proposed porch replacement will substantially alter the exterior features of the resource, that it is not a compatible substitute for wood decking, that the work will not provide additional protection of the site, nor that the existing condition is unsafe or a health hazard, as understood in 24A8B4. Staff finds the property owners will not be deprived of reasonable use or suffer undue hardship of their property if the HOP is not approved. And the staff does not find that in applying a balancing act, the public is better served by granting the permit. And for these reasons, staff finds that the HPC should deny the proposed main porch replacement as outlined in Chapter 24A8A. However, for the non-historic screened porch flooring, staff recommends approval of the proposed TimberTech material, provided there's a finished edge board around the perimeter of the flooring and the finish is minimally embossed per the policy allowance for case-by-case approval of substitute materials for use on building additions. Staff finds that the proposed TimberTech by Isaac composite porch flooring satisfies most but not all of the criteria for a compatible substitute material as defined in the policy, and that the location of the flooring within the enclosed screen porch limits the potential visibility of the flooring. The dimensions, of tongue and groove design, and proposed installation method running perpendicular to the house are consistent with the dimensions and installation of the existing material and historically appropriate or compatible porch flooring. The product is millable, available in a uniform appearance, and offers a finished edge that appears as a cupboard. So some finishes of the proposed material appear to have a minimally embossed texture on the surface, specifically the coastline sample as opposed to the slate gray or oyster colors. The product, however, cannot be painted without voiding the product warranty. Staff finds that the flooring of the non-historic porch, which is set back at the rear side corner of the house, has limited visibility from the public right-of-way and can be reviewed with greater leniency under Chapter 24A8D, and that per A8B2, the proposal for that portion will not substantially alter the exterior features of the resource. And that it will be compatible but differentiated from the historic house. And if removed in the future, will leave the essential form and integrity of the property intact in keeping with standards 9 and 10. So finally, to recap the recommendations, staff recommends the HPC approve with one condition, the non-historic screened porch floor replacement, that the screened porch floor must have a finished edge and minimally embossed texture, and deny the main porch floor replacement under 24A8A. Etc.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? This is Chair Burdett. I have a question. When we were working on our policy, I recall that we were discussing specific products as modified wood products, but we did not restrict ourselves to those products that we were discussing at that time.
Yes, that is correct.
So, go ahead.
The policy itself also does not call out any of these products by name on purpose to allow, new, as you discussed when you were creating the policy, new products come on the market every year. So the policy was written to capture the appropriate characteristics and construction detailing for those, not naming specific products.
But one of the issues with this is for the front porch is it needs to be a tongue and groove. Correct?
So on a primary resource, the policy states that wood is the only appropriate material for the porch flooring. It does allow for substitute materials on non-historic additions or related new construction, but not on the main historic porch itself.
But they could use a modified wood.
Thermally modified wood is wood.
Is wood.
Yes.
Okay. So then the trick is to find one that they can use and is tongue and groove?
Again, that's not the proposal that we have in front of us, but if we were, we do advise, tongue and groove. I might ask Mr. Bruckert, who's looked at a lot of the specifications for these thermally modified wood companies. My understanding is you can get them in tongue and groove and in plank flooring. So for less formal porches, you could use a typical sort of deck plank configuration, but that they can come in a tongue and groove.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for staff? If not, we have Catherine Cowan, the applicant, to come forward. And if you'll please have a seat and turn on the mic so the light is green, and then identify yourself by name and your relationship to this project, please. Thank you. And you have 7 minutes to say whatever you like.
Thank you. I'm Kathy Cowan, and I'm the homeowner. And this won't take 7 minutes, I hope. I guess, well, I'll be much simpler than everybody else who's been here so far, I hope, because when we put in the application, I'm not, for whatever reason, we didn't fully understand the Aratus material, right? Which I think, I've heard you mention, is an approved material. I don't know, but the Aratus material, which I brought here, and this is the TimberTech, there's the two samples. They're both tongue and groove. This is much, I don't know if this is a thermally modified wood, I don't even know what that is. And I'm sorry if I missed that part of the recommendation. There's a lot of words, and all appropriate words, but it's a long report for someone who isn't used to reading them. I don't know what a thermally modified piece of wood is, but my request, what I would really love to have happen, is that this Aratus would be approved for the whole porch, and we would do if it's an approved material, I don't have to do the TimberTech. What I don't want to do is keep replacing the wood over and over again. It's expensive, and it's expensive and time-consuming and honestly stress-producing over time, right? So I'm looking for a simpler, low-maintenance solution. And this can be painted. It comes like this, or you can get it without any. It's cheaper if you buy it without the coloring in it already, but both of them can be painted with porch paint without undermining the warranty. And they last for they're guaranteed for 30 some odd, 40 years. So I don't know how this all works, but if it's possible to sort of adjust our request within the conversation, I'm happy to put the TimberTech aside, if that's helpful or not. I know I came to you very late in the day with that question.
This is Chair Burdett. Unfortunately, the Aratus is a PVC. It's yeah. So it wouldn't comply with the front porch. It's fine for your back porch, the screened-in porch, but again, not for the front. However, there are products out there that are wood. They're modified wood, and there's several different types of modification, but they are wood, and they do qualify. And there's Akoya was mentioned. Kenobi is one of them.
Sequoia is the product or the type of wood?
Akoya is the
Akoya.
product, and it's a modified wood. I don't remember now. Or is it the?
It's acetylated wood.
Yeah.
So it's wood. It's kind of like a new pressure treating process, and I'm happy to answer more questions about that. But it's acetylated wood, so it's wood with all of the moisture basically sucked out of the cell structure of the wood to harden it. And these products have like a 40, 50-year warranty on them because they go through that process.
Yeah.
And there's a number of different product lines that do that as well.
Yeah, there are like 2 European and 2 American Canadians. They each have the different way to do it, but they basically use heat and chemicals to densify the wood, and it is wood. And the warranty years, I mean, the lifespan is, as she said, between 30 and 50 years, and the warranties are like 30 years.
Right, and is it very, very, very expensive wood? I mean, our problem is partly also trying to stay within an
In the
affordable
budget.
budget. This, obviously, any of this is more expensive than plain old wood.
Yeah.
Um,
There are price ranges. Now, I can't compare it to Aratus because I
Right.
don't know what the pricing is, but there are price ranges, like there's a low one, a middle one, and a high one. And they all kind of depend on, is it a 20-year warranty, a 30-year warranty, that kind of thing. But they all are the same. They're modified, they're wood. They will last longer than a pine wood. You do not have to do off-the-shelf
Right.
pine. There's a couple of other new manufacturers. I was researching this today for one of my clients, and I can talk to Mr. Bruchert about the 2 products that I ran into today that I hadn't heard about. we're not trying to sell you on a particular
I get that, yeah,
product, but we
yeah.
can give you the names and there are comparisons. These are very good products. They, especially the ones that are from Europe, were developed in Finland and like Norway.
Yeah,
And they've used them all over the world, including Saudi Arabia.
right.
So the stuff is good.
Yeah,
You'll just have to check the pricing for it. But a PVC product, that's a petroleum product, that's not allowed. Not because it's petroleum, but because it's a PVC.
right. So I guess I struggle as a homeowner and a citizen with not being able to use a product like this. The material that's on the porch now is not original.
Yes.
And it hasn't been original in a very, very, very long time, long before we bought the house. No one's gonna care, honestly. I mean, you guys will, right? But nobody else. Because it's a horizontal surface, I think I said it in my letter. And the house will still be the house. People are gonna walk by it, they're still gonna note it, they're still gonna say the same things. And this is functional. I really don't understand the logic with something like this. I can see it if it was an actual specific feature that was disappearing.
You have a primary resource, which is like the best, the best level
Right.
of resources in Kensington. And when you start replacing the original materials, and I don't mean the original style of material, but the actual wood, and you start replacing that with plastic, and over time, you can get to a point where quite a bit of the original material is gone. And we see that Kensington's one of the few places where that hasn't happened. But we see that in other parts of the county where, a couple of the examples tonight were where original material just has been over the years removed and replaced with other things until there isn't anything left of the original house. And we've had to take properties off the list simply because there's nothing left of the original materials. So
Yeah.
that's why it's important, and I know nobody can see it, and trust me, we went, 5 years ago, so many of our meetings were about solar panels. Now, it's all about porches. All of our, so many of our discussions are about porches because of this issue, because the wood is not standing up anymore. The new growth wood is not as good as the old growth.
Perhaps you guys could save yourselves a lot of time. I mean, I understand it, and I'm not gonna change your mind, but I feel like you could easily have a policy that said for porch flooring, you can't change the rails, you can't change the columns, you can't do this, all that stuff has to be wood, because there's fake stuff for all that too. But for porch flooring, since it's such a widespread problem, and people like us who want to keep the house and maintain it and have gone to a lot of effort over time, happily, but not always with ease. Finding places where stuff like this could just make everybody's life easier and not deteriorate the full house. I mean, you're describing circumstances that are very different from our house and our experience. And I just feel like I have the right to say that to you guys because I think you have it within your power. And my guess is we're gonna go look at those modified wood products and they're gonna be twice as expensive. And then we may not be able to do it. So then I'm faced with crappy wood that's gonna rot again, or just leaving the porch as it is for a while. I don't know, but it just seems like an unnecessary place to put homeowners and citizens, quite honestly.
Well, and again, we went through, 4 months, 5 months of discussions as a commission, discussing these very issues within the commission, in a public, here in public, but even though it wasn't during these hearings, we do hear what you're saying. We do understand. It's just, this is, again, you're in a, and you can do your back porch, closed-in porch with this product. It's just that your primary resource, and this is your front porch, and Kensington has its own guidelines. Would any of the other commissioners like to?
I mean, Helen Wilkes specifically told us like 4 days ago that she thinks that the county should accept wood products like this, porch products like this. So I don't think you get more Kensington Historic than her.
Well, yeah, Ms. Wilkes has been in here with her porch too.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I appreciate your time. I'm not going to take anybody else's time. You've been here a long time. There's a lot of other people who have other things, but it's extraordinarily frustrating.
We do appreciate that.
And, I like to feel good about my house and about Kensington. But
Well,
anyway.
just check with Mr. Bruchert. He'll give you the names of some of the companies and check in with them and see what the prices are. There is quite a range in prices on them. And there are some products that are not modified so substantially as well.
Yeah. All right.
Chair, if I may, just regarding the Eritis product for your back porch, I personally have used it. It is not one of the least expensive PVCs, but it's a more expensive PVC, but not out of range, especially for maybe the size you're looking at and the square footage. I'm pretty pleased with it, so it's something that you might want to continue to consider there.
Yeah, no, I think, I don't know what we're going to do, but yeah, because the rotting, its biggest problem is on the front porch and the side porch that don't have the screen on it. So that's where you step on places, your foot could start to go through and things like that. So anyway, I appreciate it, and hopefully there'll be evolution over time. So hopefully I don't ever have to come back here again. Nothing you, it's kind of like the dentist, like I get you guys, but.
Well, I was just going to suggest, pressure treated is wood, and it's paintable after 6 months, and it's not, and it's acceptable.
Here's one of the problems, though, and I know, unless there's something new out there, you can't get pressure treated in the required width.
Can't you?
No.
I thought you could.
You cannot, because, honestly, I'll be honest,
No.
if you look at our porch, it's 1.5-inch boards.
Yeah.
That's historically accurate. There's no way you can get that.
Well, I think you could justify spending a lot more knowing that you're never going to have to replace it again. I mean, if you've replaced it 3 times already with crappy wood and you need to, up the ante on the product, which there are products that are acceptable, then you're not looking at ever doing it again. So there's something to be said for that. But
Right.
but we do hear you. And the commission had to come to a policy, and it was, there are people on the commission that do feel the way that you do, and we've had quite a lot of back and forth on this. So, and it's not an easy issue, and we're kind of hoping that products will emerge and that technology will, things are constantly changing and new products are constantly coming on the market. And the wood requirement, there are more and more things available. So I do hope that you can find something that's acceptable for your porch, but we do feel your
And the
pain.
painting, right, okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Haynes?
Well, and just to add to your statement is if using the wood, I believe you'd be eligible for tax credits?
She would be eligible for the local and the state tax credits,
So that's 20 and 25%.
20 and 25%.
So that would really help offset the installation and
Yeah.
material purchase of costs.
Yeah, we've done that in the past, and it is very helpful. We like that part. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we need to actually do something with this?
You need to make a motion.
Okay. Let's see.
Very good. Then I move that the Historic Preservation Commission approve, I'm sorry, excuse me one moment, that the Historic Preservation Commission approve HOP number 111 8349 at 10300 Fawcett Street, Kensington, based on the staff condition number 1 that the screen porch flooring must have finished edge and minimally embossed finish, and under Chapter 24A 8B 1 and 2 and 24A 8D. And second, deny the main porch floor replacement under 24A 8A, having that the Aris or Timber Tech is inappropriate material for the historic resource.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner Pelletier, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There are no nays and no abstentions. This motion passes with the one condition. And finally, we are on to item 3A at 12450 Old Columbia Pike, Silver Spring. Is there a staff report?
There is. Give us just one moment while we swap team members.
All right, this is the staff report for preliminary consultation for 12450 Old Columbia Pike in Silver Spring. It's this specific property here, which actually falls within the environmental setting of the Connolly Greenhouse, or the Connolly House / Green Ridge master plan site, which is a historic house constructed circa 1902. This is to be reviewed under Chapter 24A and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. Little background of the planning on this site. In May 2022, the Planning Board approved a preliminary plan at the subject property, finding that this proposal conformed with the Fairlands Master Plan and that there were adequate facilities to accommodate the 270-seat church. Historic preservation staff provided comments during that plan that the placement of the church appeared to be appropriate, but that the proposal's compatibility would depend on the church's massing and architectural design, which were not required as part of the proposal at that point. Also, in late 2020, the Planning Department approved a natural resource inventory forest stand delineation, which mapped the environmental and topographical features in the property. And in 2023, there was a forest conservation amendment that identified all of the accessory structures on site and identified them to be removed. So the Connolly House is a large, well-detailed two-story frame. One designation identifies it as colonial revival. I think we identified it as neoclassical house with a prominent double-story pediment and portico. In addition to the house, there are several significant outbuildings, including a spring house and what was called a gas house. The spring house is described as being in the southeast corner of the property, adjacent to the stream and in poor condition, and that was back in the 1980s. It's not on any map, and staff didn't find any evidence of that building in its site visit. And the Connolly family lived and operated a farm in this location dating to the early 1800s. At its largest, it was approximately 600 acres and had been reduced substantially over time. The original farmhouse burned, and the current house was reconstructed. We don't know if it was in our records don't indicate whether or not it was reconstructed in the same location. So this is the house, and then in the lower left is also the house, but it's approximately in the area of the easternmost corner of the subject property. So again, just familiarize yourself. This is on the subject property. The gate is looking into it. On your right, as you enter through the current gate, you see the house moving along. This is largely open, except it's forested on the western edge where the stream is. You have a agricultural building that was built sometime between 1951 and 1979. There is a T111 sided building to your left, which is the south when you enter the property, and then there's another gambrel building that was installed within the last 20 years or so. And then lastly, there is a stone structure on the site. There's nothing in the interior. It's sort of built into the hillside. This may be the gas house. Unfortunately, none of the documented maps identify any of the outbuildings by location or by type. So we're sort of flying blind here on the nature of this building at this point. So because this wouldn't be easy, 2/3 of the site are restricted from development because through a forest conservation easement. So that's the southern portion of the building, the lot that you see outlined in green here. There's a stream buffer and a pond. So all of that area is not buildable. Additionally, the lot slopes towards the southeast. So you're dealing with grade over much of the site as well. So the applicant proposes to develop the site as a church, including constructing a church building in the sort of the northern corner of the lot at the top, extensive grading and paving, constructing a retaining wall along the property line, demolishing the existing outbuildings, and then removing a substantial number of trees. All of the trees in there are identified for removal. And then again, this is a forest conservation easement, so none of the trees will be removed in that area. So we have sort of designs for a pre-engineered church building. The building materials identified include IFAS walls, aluminum windows and doors, metal roofing, and a fiberglass steeple. So this is, again, as a preliminary, we're making preliminary findings and sort of entering into discussion. And staff finds that 3 of the 4 existing accessory structures are not historic, and their approval and their demolition should be approved as a matter of course. The stone building appears to be historic and should be retained, barring any additional documentation about that building. Staff finds that the proposed placement of the church will not have a substantial impact on the visual character of the Connolly House. And staff finds that the level of detail for the proposed materials is insufficient to reach a recommendation at this point. However, staff does not find IFAS to be inappropriate within the environmental setting of the Connolly House. So staff finds the proposed retaining wall should have a stone or textured face to better blend in with the character of the site, and that will run almost the full length of the northern property line. And staff finds that the amount of asphalt paving is substantial and recommends steps be taken to reduce its visual impact. This could be done with a textured surface like stamped concrete or exposed aggregate closer to Columbia Pike. It could also be done with some other visual screening between Columbia Pike and the church building. So there are a number of questions in the staff report aimed at the HPC. Primarily, does the HPC concur with staff's finding regarding the 4 accessory structures? Does staff find, will the HPC provide feedback on the appropriateness of the size, design, placement, and materials of the church building? Are there any revisions or recommendations necessary for a second preliminary consultation? And then regarding the regrading, does the HPC concur with staff's finding that a concrete retaining wall is incompatible with the character of the site? Does the HPC find the amount of paving on site will retain the site's character? And then are additional tree plantings between Columbia Pike and the church building required to preserve the site's character? Additionally, staff identified the following materials are necessary to make a final determination for a HOP, including comparative information that shows the height and massing of the church in relation to the Connolly House. They are separated by about 250 feet, but there is a grade change and setback change. Additionally, detailed exterior material specifications. Material samples may be necessary. In the case of the roofing, for example, the submitted plans just identified the roof as being metal roofing. We need more detailed specifications than that to provide a finding of compatibility. And then most churches have signage. We fully expect signage to be installed at this site at some point, but signage details will require a HOP either as part of a final HOP submission or as a separate submission on its own. And with that, I will answer any questions that the commissioners have. And I can pull up the full plan set if the commissioners have any questions related specifically to the building plans.
Commissioner Pelletier?
Thank you. Where is the stone house on the final site plan? Like where?
So it's actually, based on the GIS, it's on the property line. So it's right here. There may be, Sorry, it got clipped. So it's further up on the right side on the property line. It's sort of in these trees right here.
So how is that going to affect their plan?
Well,
Or will it?
So it will. It's identified to be removed in, sorry, let me find that cursor here. Believe it's right in here, and it's shown to be removed in the site plan. So it's in the parking lot. After the staff report, I did a little more research in previous submissions for this property and what led staff to previously scratch out Spring House and write Gas House in a previous staff report. And the fact that this is partially engaged into the hillside leads me to conclude that that's probably the case, that this is the identified Gas House. Unfortunately, there were no maps associated with that. But it is basically where the retaining wall is going and where parking is proposed.
Okay, so there'll be some alterations if we
Yes, there would be modifications to
do the
the
plan
hardscaping
in order
to
okay.
accommodate that.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
This is Chair Berta. When you say gas house, what do you mean?
So it was a facility to manufacture gas for gas lighting.
Okay. You mean there's a gas well there, or?
No. They would have processed gas, usually using coal, but they would have produced gas on site because you're not close enough to the city for the city gas works to provide direct line into your gas lamps.
Learn something new
So
every day.
on a very small scale.
Yeah.
I mean, what we usually see are much larger facilities for this, but you also look at the high style of the house in 1902, and now I won't speculate why the former house burned down, but I don't think it's all related to this because there wasn't documentation to go along with that. But yeah, small scale gas production for gas lighting.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Commissioner Galway?
This is Commissioner Galway. Was there I can't tell from the photograph, that little stone structure, is there a chimney of any sort attached to it?
It looks like there's a pipe on the left side.
I thought that was a tree.
So it may be. I was out with the applicant team in January when it was about 4 degrees outside. So identified the building, but didn't spend a whole lot of time out there. And as you see now, the greenery has all grown up around it. So it may warrant additional investigation. But as you can see, there have been some structural stabilization with the cable here. All of the wood inside is circular sawn. So unfortunately, that doesn't really help us all that much with dating, aside from the fact that it was, modern milled. But otherwise, you see some insect damage along the front. The roof seems to be relatively intact. And the building did get, you can see what looks to be almost pure Portland cement was used to repoint it at some point in the building's past.
Thanks.
Commissioner Haynes?
What is the exterior material of the Connolly house?
It's all wood-sided.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Then if the applicant would come forward, I have German Beneda and Jerry Warder listed, but any of you who are here to speak, you can come forward.
Bring them on up, Jerry.
Everybody's welcome. And how much time do they have?
7 minutes.
7 minutes, okay. So if you'll have a seat and turn on the mics so the light is lit green, and you'll have to identify yourselves and by name and your relationship to the project, meaning are you the architect, the owner, whatever. And then all of you combined have 7 minutes. So divvy up your time appropriately, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Jerry Water.
Sir, we need you to speak into the microphone,
Okay.
so we get that on the record. No, you can put it right in front of you.
Okay.
Just hold on to it. You're good.
Hello, I'm Jerry Water. I'm a consultant. I work in design build of churches from New York to South Florida. I've been working with this Iglesia church here for approximately 6 years now. And to my right is the architect of record, Philip Lacey. And further down, the next is John Shienko, who's our civil engineer, professional engineer in site development. To my left is Mrs. Pineda. She is the wife of the Mr. German Pineda, who is the pastor of the church. The building structure itself is a metal pre-engineered, it's 24 gauge steel building with a standing seam roof and smooth side panels. It's going to contain a sanctuary for approximately 290 people and various classrooms. And on a lower level, it is 2 stories, approximately 6,500 square feet per floor, about 13,000 square feet total area. The upstairs will have some classrooms, a pastor's study, and Mrs. study, as well as as I said, the classrooms and toilet facilities. In the lower level, we will have a kitchen, not a commercial kitchen. It'll just be for a refrigerator, microwave, and things like that, and other classrooms on the lower level. We will also have a 2-story elevator at approximately 1,400 pounds. Therefore, it's rated to carry approximately 7 people at a time. We do have the building colors. Of course, the standing seam roof color as selected by the church would be a black color, and again, a standing seam. And the sides of the metal building would be of a buckskin tan. If you like, I could bring these up so you can, because this is the 24 gauge metal too that would be used to construct the building itself. Is there any questions from the committees here?
Are there any questions? Commissioner Damiani?
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. Can you describe the smooth panels of metal on the sides? Will there be seams and abutments between the metal along the side, as I understand it?
Alongside?
Is it the buckskin is?
The color he mentioned for the, actually it's for the exterior finish insulation material. That's what's shown on the drawings now. I did hear the point that the staff, this is the first I've heard of it, that there's a question of appropriateness of that material.
Yes, the ephes, the insulation. Okay. It's ephes. Yeah.
Okay, so the metal panel is above and the ephes is below? Is that what we're looking at?
The roof is metal.
But you've got 2 different materials on your elevations. Are they, what are they? There's a stipple.
So the drawings show the concrete basement level.
So that's concrete.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the
but
basement.
that's below grade. I apologize.
Gotcha, okay. And so the metal, is it panels? How does it go up? Like, how do you,
No,
or is
You
it,
just have ephes on the walls, correct?
yes,
And the roof is metal.
yes.
And
got it, okay.
So the metal, the sample you've got that's the buckskin is really not the material, but just a color reference.
Just the color?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's oh, okay, I got it now. All right, thank you.
And I might add that so-called stone house or gas house that is there is only approximately about 8 foot by 8 foot. So, and right now it's just a bunch of junk in there, like old tires and things, but as being used for, I didn't notice any type of a gas flue or anything for combustible gases in that building myself at the time when I went out and took those photos.
Any other questions? Commissioner Pelletier.
Thanks, Commissioner Pelletier. How is it heated and cooled? We have like condensing units out.
Precisely, we have self-contained, right now, natural gas air heat and electric air conditioning, self-contained within the packaged units.
Okay, and so you'll have condensers outside and blowers inside, like a split
Yes,
system?
air handling systems in the
Okay,
inside, right?
is that shown on the site plan? Where are those located? Can't find the site plan now. Oh, there it is. So on the site plan that we're looking at, are where are the condensers going to be? And for 270 seats, I assume you'd have a fair amount of cooling.
Yes.
They're in the rear.
In the rear, yeah.
Are they on?
And you're having to heat and cool the lower level also, of course.
Right, right. I'm just wondering if that would be something that would be seen from the main house. That's my concern.
Not in the back of the building, or we can definitely place them on the outside exterior so that they couldn't be,
Okay.
wherever you like, yeah. It's not
Okay,
a problem.
thanks.
Not a problem.
Commissioner Pelletier, one of the staff comments gets at just that. We can't even tell where this proposed building is in relation to the existing house. There's been no site models, massing, cut sections through. So one of the staff requests is for that additional information whenever you're looking at any infill construction in a district or for a site. That's kind of our starting point. Normally we start with the massing and the site planning. They've kind of got the box already done.
Right, I did read that, so
Yep.
yeah, we're waiting for more information.
Excuse me, but we did submit an aerial view of the Connolly house and relative to the location of where the church would be. That was an aerial view, yeah.
Yes, but that's not quite what we're
Oh, I'm sorry.
what we're talking about, but we did get that. Thank you for
okay,
that.
Great.
This is Chair Burdett. I have a question for staff. The Conley House now, is it still, is it a park? Is it rented out to a farmer?
It's still owned by the Connolly family.
Oh, it still is, okay.
So, I mean, this land was subdivided and purchased by the current applicant, so the Connolly family subdivided it. There had been some other proposals over the years for them to subdivide this land and use sort of other surrounding parcels for larger scale development. One was for an animal hospital, another was for actually a campus for the Tacoma Academy Seventh-day Adventist School. Both of those did not proceed beyond a certain point for a variety of reasons, not all of which were documented in the file. So, but yeah, the Connolly family is sort of reduced. Basically, they've cut their 8-acre parcel in half, and the current applicant purchased the 4 acres, subject to the forest conservation easement, for development as a separate development. So the Connolly still owns it as a single-family house, with a number of outbuildings still intact.
Thank you.
As of approximately 2 weeks ago, the home had all of its interior furniture outside. I don't know why, what was going on, but anyhow, it was out there.
Do they live there?
I don't.
So it's actually used as a single-family home? Oh, okay.
Correct.
I have a question about the parking and the retaining wall. The retaining wall is being used to retain, is so you can get a flat surface for your parking, right? You're cutting into a slope.
I'll refer you to John Chianco, our
Okay.
site development.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And the parking itself, is it just asphalt? Is it permeable?
Yeah, I should remember. I think the spaces are going to be permeable and the aisle is going to be regular.
Okay, and are there any plans to add any trees back along the property line? I mean, you've got the wall there, and that's kind of going to prevent adding trees back on your property, but,
Now, there's not that much space back there. The wall actually goes from.
Turn on your mic.
The wall actually goes from, so you have the site plan up. Maybe to the left side of that circular turnaround for the fire department, all the way to the first island going towards the main street. So it's a pretty long wall there. And there's no, I don't think there'd be any space to plant any trees.
and what's the depth of the wall?
I mean, those details aren't here yet, but I mean,
Okay.
probably at least 1.5 feet, minimum a foot, max 1.5 feet.
How much of a slope is,
How tall is it?
how tall is the wall? Because that's going to define the slope. Oh, I see, it says 2 to 4
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah, so
2 feet 4. No, 2 to 4 feet.
well, that's the preliminary plan. I updated all of it here. So the main, the adjusted wall heights are gonna be 3 feet here, 7 feet in the middle,
Mhm.
and then you go back to about 3 feet on the,
7 feet tall in the middle?
yeah, because you have a top of wall at 75.5. And
Wow.
the contour is at a 368, 369. So 6, 7 feet max. So you guys are looking at an older,
Okay.
that's the preliminary plan. That's real old. Jerry, did you give the staff a copy of the approved stormwater? Did you guys have the approved stormwater plan, or you just had this one?
We haven't seen the stormwater plan.
Okay. So maybe I'll get that to you guys after this.
Do you think that it would be feasible to redo your parking enough to save to an area of, to move 2 spaces around to save that existing building? The little gas shack?
Yeah, what I'll have to do is, and the history of it is, I had to come in and get my surveyor to locate some things that weren't before. So my plan here, I have to superimpose where that outhouse is on here, and I can see. Of course, I don't know what the zoning had, I don't know how they calculated their parking based off seats or whatever, but I don't know if they was right on the button or if I can remove spaces or not, but I'll have to check the zoning.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I think I missed it. This Commissioner Pelletier, where is the wall 7 feet high?
So, yeah, the best way I can try to.
Is it by the road? Or is it in the middle? Or is it?
It's right in the middle, right in the middle of the site. I have a top of wall at 75.5. So maybe right, if you take that one where it says 3.77 acres, go perpendicular to the line, right around that area is where I'm at.
Oh.
Oh, I didn't realize you had the screen right there.
Oh, okay. So kind of near the stone house.
Well, you know what? Let me try to figure out exactly. So it's literally halfway in between
Okay.
the property. If you take the whole length of the line, halfway in between that
Is
I
the
have a-
high point
is
on
the high,
it.
yeah. I have a
Okay.
top of wall 75 and the grade, like I said, for the parking lot, roughly a 368.5.
Okay. And what's the, well, these are probably questions you don't know the answer to. What is the wall made of?
I'm not smart enough to know that. He's the architect. Whatever they want to build, it could be anything. I need is you retain the dirt. That's all I care about.
Oh, it says concrete block retaining wall, but is that the, I know this is very preliminary. I'm not going to get into the finished details here. Thank you.
So the exterior of the church, one of the staff comments was that the ephes isn't appropriate. Am I correct, staff? Yes, okay. And is there, what would staff recommend would be appropriate? What are the options?
I mean, so sort of more consistent with a rural church, which I think would be, some sort of lap siding. I think that for contemporary building that we would entertain fiber cement clapboards. Wood siding is always appropriate, but, I think that at least as presented, the uniformity and the flatness of the design is really incompatible in a historic context, and that more depth needs to be added. And there are a number of ways to do that, obviously, but but at its simplest way, we would sort of refer back to the Connolly House, but also think about, just rural churches more generally are constructed usually out of wood, and rare cases stone, just because of the materials availability and cost.
I guess I look at this church, and it's contemporary to me. It looks kind of 1960-ish, actually, and you would have seen it done in brick, because ephes is a fairly modern material, modern being 30, 40 years. I mean, I can understand because ephes is supposed to look like stucco, and it doesn't look like stucco. It looks like a shopping center, a strip shopping center. With a prefab building like this, what are the options for the facade, for the materials?
Well, you can use the metal that many of the pre-engineered builders have, but I didn't think that would be the best material. The other approach, with the economy in mind, having brick or some other type of metal panel on the exterior, again, you're getting the same contemporary look, but not the depth that we're talking about and relating to a historical building. We never had any intentions of competing with next door. This is very far away, and it's contemporary, I guess, in other buildings in the neighborhood. Certainly, there could be more masonry, different look, but economy was a consideration, excuse me.
I think this would be one point when having some rendering or modeling done that shows the Connolly House and the church in scale to each other, but separated so we have an idea about exactly how the scale of them compared to how far apart they are. And the Connolly House would be at a higher elevation. Am I getting that right?
No. Yes.
Yeah. So that would also, I mean, you can see the house over here. The church is larger than it, but not by that significant amount. The church is, yeah.
Our floor level is 10 feet lower than the Connolly House.
Do you know what so I would, on the exterior of the church, where the roof comes down, that's probably about 10 feet? That's a kind of a guess.
I was saying the first floor of this church.
Yeah, first floor to the eave line.
Are you saying the first floor of the church is 10 feet lower than the first floor of the Conley House?
Yes.
At least.
Yeah.
Okay,
The last contour I have is a 378.
gotcha.
The Conley House is even higher than that.
Right, and somewhere in there, you've got a max 7-foot-high retaining wall between the church and the Connolly House. I mean, that much of a step up. Okay. Yeah, I think it would be helpful to see a rendering with the retaining wall, the Connolly House in the background, the materiality and the massing of the church. It's hard to really judge.
Kind of like just a very diagrammatic section cut through the properties, the two properties, to show where the church is in its profile and where the Conley House is setting on the land, and it's the blocking of it, its general height. That would be very helpful to have, so we get a sense of how they set. So would anybody like to make a coherent collection of their comment, or to start? Oh, we have questions. To the accessory structures. Okay, I'll take the first one. I agree with the staff in that 3 of the structures are fine to be demolished, but the little gas house, the stone house, I would like to see that retained in place, and with a door that would be shut, and but it as a figural element of the original use of the property, that would be a nice thing to have there if you can reorientate your parking to save basically the width of 2 parking spaces, or whatever would need. Next. Okay, Commissioner Pelletier.
Pelletier, as far as the appropriateness of the size, design, placement, and materials of the church building, the placement seems like you put it just about where you can put it, given the easement on the property. The size, just based on plan, seems reasonable, although we'd have to see the massing, we'd have to see the volume of the church. Materials we've talked about, I think we would want to see something that was more in context with the rural setting. But I think that the size and placement seem okay to me. The design and the materials, I think, is to be determined with more information to come. And the revision that I would like to see, or the recommendation, would be just more materiality, a 3-dimensional rendering that includes the Conley House, so we can really get a sense for how this sits in the setting. I'm very curious about how that retaining wall is gonna work with the two structures, the Conley House and this new church. And it would be nice, I think the pervious pavement, I think, is a really good idea for the spaces. But that, as far as these questions go, that's my opinion.
Commissioner Galway?
This is Commissioner Galway. Just to try to address some of the questions that staff had. I think the devil's in the details in terms of the retaining wall and how you treat that. I don't think it's a visible thing from the Conley House, but what I would be considered as important is from the Conley House looking out, what does that church look like? And with you being 10, I think it might even closer to 12 feet difference. What are we actually seeing? Are we seeing the roof? Are we seeing the roof and that second level? And I would agree that I don't think that the ephes itself would be a compatible material. But if you can't see it from either the old Columbia or you can't see it from the Conley House, then it becomes less of an issue for me. So I think understanding what do you really see from the Conley House, if you could project and kind of get a sense of what that does in terms of the elevation. And then I think also from the street, generally I think it's sitting back far enough that from the street, that I don't consider that to be an issue. So I think the location of the church makes a lot of sense. I would agree that it would be so totally suitable to remove the three of the four structures. The issue I have with what we're now calling this gas house is, given the topography, and you're dropping a 7-foot retaining wall there, that thing's going to be sitting above the ground, above the parking level, 6 or 7 feet or something like this. So I'm not sure what you do with it, and I'm not sure you could even move it down without the thing falling apart. So I would be in agreement that I'd love to see it there. Maybe it becomes something related to the church in some way. Maybe it becomes, I don't know, but, so I would love to be able to be saved. I'm just not certain that it's even possible to do that. So that's my comments. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Haynes. I concur with the other commissioners' comments. I do think, from just looking at the site plan and the topo, that looks like your floor to ridge is about 32 feet. We're about 12 feet. The church is 12 feet down from the Connolly House. So from the Connolly House, you're going to pretty much see the roof of the church. And I'm not sure that's a problem, because the church sits back well back from the Connolly House itself. And if the site plan is accurate, there appears to be a tree line on the Connolly property. I don't know if that's accurate, but if it is, it would begin to screen the church itself. So I agree that the location of the church is probably where it has to be on this particular site. Given the grade that you described and the retaining wall height, I don't know if that existing stone building would be able to be retained. It seems like it's falling right where that 7-foot drop's going to be. So you'll look at that a little bit closer. But I agree, we do need more renderings to really get a sense of the relationship of the Connolly House and the church. So that's been stated already. And I'm fine with demolishing the other 3 buildings on the site. I think that's appropriate as well. So, I mean, overall, the massing of your church is fairly simple. It comes down to the materiality of it, and maybe there's a vertical board and batten of material that could possibly be used that takes on a more rural, almost barn-like characteristic. You might look at something like that. Maybe it could have a stone foundation up, 3-4 feet, and then transition to another material, again, just to relate it more towards rural architecture. Think of barns, structures like that, agricultural structures that could be interpreted to be a church. So, but overall, I kind of support the general direction that you're going. Thank you. Down there.
Commissioner Dominiani.
Thanks. I'd just like to agree with the comments of the other commissioners. I'd like to speak a little bit about some of the tree plantings as well. I'm noting a large area of sort of clearing of trees where the new parking lot and the new apron will be. I think there's an opportunity. I'm familiar with the site up there. It is sort of a wall of green. It's a very green and beautiful kind of lush site. And I think there's an opportunity to add back in some trees as well in the area directly north of your apron, almost bordering the adjacent property, as well as west of there as the slope, it's graded to slope down towards the buffer area there. I'm noting a lot of trees being taken away there, but I think there's an opportunity to add some back in, again, to preserve that beautiful green kind of rural character of the site as it is. And I think that will go towards what Commissioner Galloway said about perhaps like lessening visibility from the right-of-way from Old Columbia too. I think that it can be a nice way to preserve something there. Other than that, I agree with the comments about materials and massing. Thank you.
So I think you've heard our comments, and again, this is a preliminary. The staff will put the comments together and give them to you and talk with you about them. You're going to be coming back to see us again with some more information. But other than that, thank you for coming in and speaking with us. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
I just want to say something.
Yes.
So when we bought this property, Mr. Conley said that all his land, that they own it from his dad. He say every piece of land that they own, they want to sell it to a church to be built in it. So that's what, their wish was before they die. So if you see also behind us in the other corner, there's another church. So that's the one, another land.
Okay.
And on this other side of Sherry Hill, there's another church, and it's a school also. And he say all these properties, they were all Mr. Conley properties, but they all wanted to be sold to, to a church to be built in it. Because when we bought this, we offered them, the money to buy it. There was somebody else who offered them $100,000 more for the property, and they refused it. They said no, because our property, it has to be built a church in there. And what they wanted to build, it wasn't a church. So they rather sold it to us.
Well, thank you for telling us. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yes, and thank you for having us over.
Thank you. Good evening. All right, moving on, meeting minutes for May 28th. That was a really interesting evening. I have read the meeting minutes. I don't have any issue with them unless somebody else does. I make a motion that we approve the Wednesday, May 28th, 2005 meeting minutes. Huh? 2025. Whatever. A year, a few weeks
Commissioner
ago.
Haynes, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The meeting minutes are passed. Next, we have, do we have any commission items? Do we have any staff items? Then we are done. The meeting is adjourned. Yeah, it turned out longer than I expected.
This isn't really a staff item, but a note for everybody. We are coming to the end of the fiscal year, so I have to get all forms in by the end of June for you to get reimbursed for your meetings. So please fill out your forms tonight or bring them to me next time, because we can't process them in July. In July, we start all over again. So thanks.